Before we start, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, can you please tell me where and what time you're watching? Thanks. I never thought I'd end up in Fresno, much less the East Side. That wasn't part of any plan I ever had. Life was stable in Sacramento. I had a small studio near Midtown, a list of reliable clients who liked my graphic design work, and a rhythm that made sense. Rent was high, but I managed. Coffee shops on every block, friends I could call last minute, and just enough distance from family to breathe. I wasn't running from anything, but I wasn't ready to take anything on either. But all that shifted when Micah got hit. My little brother, 17, bright, full of sarcasm and energy. He was walking home from school when some drunk idiot in a silver pickup swerved off the road and pinned him against a fence. Fractured his left leg in 2 places, tore up his knee pretty bad. Our mom couldn't leave her job in Oregon, and Dad's been a ghost since I was 11. So it fell on me. No debate. No delay. I packed up, broke my lease, and moved into a month-to-month rental off Kings Canyon Road. It wasn't awful. Not at first. Just quieter. Strip malls, lots of closed-up businesses, chain-link fences sagging in the wind. My neighbors didn't talk much, and the streetlights blinked out half the time. My car, with its Sacramento plates and clean exterior, stood out like a fresh pair of shoes in a thrift store. People stared, but not in a curious way, more like they were making a mental note. I worked from the kitchen table, designed logos and ad banners while reheating leftovers and texting with clients who thought I was still in Sacramento. Micah mostly stayed in bed, binging anime and playing games. He was healing, but the boredom was getting to him. That Thursday night around 8 Rao, he asked me for a cheap headset. His broke, and he wanted to hop on with his friends. I almost said no. I was tired. But then I looked at his leg in the brace and the dark circles under his eyes. I grabbed my keys, pulled a 20 from the junk drawer, and headed out. Family Dollar was 5 minutes away. The parking lot was mostly empty. A single car with one flickering headlight sat 2 spaces over. I glanced at it, made a mental note, and kept walking. Inside, it was what you'd expect. Half-stocked shelves, fluorescent lighting that hummed above like mosquitoes in your ear, and a pop song playing low over the speakers. The electronics section was shoved in the back. Cheap off-brand earbuds, wall chargers, a dusty Bluetooth speaker. I crouched to grab the last wired headset on the bottom shelf. As I stood up, I noticed the guy next to me, tall, maybe early 40s, thin build, faded leather jacket, jeans stained at the knees. His breath smelled like cigarettes and something else, mildew maybe. He wasn't looking at the shelf. He was watching me, no blinking, no expression, just watching. I didn't say anything, just turned and made my way to the front. The cashier looked about my age, buzzed haircut, bored eyes, headphones around his neck. As he rang me up, he glanced behind me. "You good?" I leaned in, kept my voice low. "Think someone's following me. Tall guy, back aisle. Can you just watch when I leave?" He nodded. "Yeah, I'll lock the doors right after." I paid and walked fast to my car, keys tight in my hand. As I reversed, I looked back at the storefront. The man was there, standing just behind the glass, watching. At home, I microwaved some frozen burritos and checked on Micah. He was fine, laughing at something on his screen. I settled on the couch, feet tucked under me, TV low. At 11:23 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number, no profile picture, just a text. "Nice headset. You always go cheap." My stomach dropped. I hadn't told anyone I went. Didn't post online. Micah didn't even know I bought one. I didn't respond. Blocked the number. Told myself it was a scam. The next night, another message. Different number. "Your porch light's out." I looked. The bulb above the door was flickering. The third message hit harder. "That red hoodie suits you better than the blue one." I wore that red hoodie out to the trash around 6 almost p.m. Just for a minute. I hadn't seen anyone. That was it. I called the police. I explained everything. The store, the man, the texts. The officer was polite but distant. Unless there's a direct threat or trespassing, there's not much we can do. Could be spoofed numbers, burners, keep your lights on, file a report. It wasn't enough. I swapped the porch bulb for a floodlight, bought blackout curtains, a motion sensor from Home Depot, slept with my car keys under my pillow and a kitchen knife in reach. For a few days, it was quiet. I let myself breathe. Then, late one night, I saw a car idling across the street, lights off, engine running, one dim headlight, same shape, same spot, same gut feeling. He didn't get out, didn't move, just sat there. 20 minutes passed before he pulled off. Next morning, I went back to Family Dollar, daytime, just to look. The cashier saw me and leaned in. He's been back, couple times, doesn't buy anything. Last time he asked if we sold pepper spray. Pepper spray? I asked. Yeah, said he wanted to feel safe, but he wasn't laughing. I filed a second report that afternoon. This time I didn't wait. I packed a bag, drove Micah across town to stay with our cousin Jay. The house was too quiet after that. I couldn't sleep. Not really. The texts stopped. That should have been a relief. But silence is worse sometimes. I kept checking the cameras, kept looking over my shoulder. I jumped every time the motion light came on. A raccoon once triggered it around 3 a.m., and I stayed awake till dawn. I never saw the man again. But I never really stopped seeing him. I still freelance. Still take care of Micah. But I don't shop alone at night. I don't open messages from unknown numbers. I trust my instincts no matter how irrational they feel. Because once someone takes your sense of safety, it's hard to get it back. Not every threat is loud. Some creep in with quiet persistence, worming into your daily life until fear becomes routine. I don't know when it started. I definitely don't know when it ended. But I do know this. Sometimes, the scariest thing isn't the person following you. It's realizing how easy it is to be watched. How little it takes for someone to find you. How quickly ordinary can turn into something else entirely. How do you know when someone stops watching? Or worse, how do you know they ever stopped at all? They say everything changes in a moment. I don't know if that's true. For me, everything changed over years. Slow, aching years that carved the shape of my life like water against rock. When people talk about grief, they talk about impact, sudden loss. But there's another kind. The kind that builds under your feet like soft erosion. You don't even realize what you're standing on is crumbling until it's gone. I used to tell myself I was strong because I kept going. Through the divorce, through the eviction, through nights with no power and a daughter too young to understand why mommy cried in the shower. Taylor was 5 when her dad left. No note, just a final argument and the sound of his car backing out at midnight. I didn't chase him. I locked the door and laid beside her, curled up on her tiny twin mattress, whispering that it would be okay, even though I wasn't sure. We moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on the rougher end of South Arlington. The kind where neighbors screamed at each other through paper-thin walls, and kids played in cracked parking lots while their parents worked too many jobs. I stocked shelves at Family Dollar, took extra shifts, worked holidays. Taylor learned how to microwave meals by the time she was 8. She'd sit at the table doing homework while I ironed my uniform shirt, trying not to wrinkle it more than it already was. 5 years passed like that. Me grinding, her growing. I kept telling myself it would be worth it, that if I just kept pushing, kept saving, something would break in our favor. When I finally got that assistant manager badge, I held it like it meant something more than a raise. It meant I could stop borrowing from my sister. It meant I could breathe, if only a little. It meant Taylor could maybe go to college without wondering if the lights would stay on. Taylor was 17 last fall. Smarter than me, braver too. Stubborn in a way that could either change the world or ruin her. She was taller than me now, wore her hair short like a dare. She had a mouth on her, sharp and quick, and sometimes it made me smile when I shouldn't have. But she had fight. God, she had so much fight. And I told myself, even when I failed at everything else, I gave her that. Her first job was at the Kenmore Boulevard Family Dollar. I vouched for her, called in a favor with a manager friend, told them she was dependable. She'd seen what it meant to work hard. She knew responsibility. I made sure she'd be safe. I thought I did. Then came Thomas Rainey. Mid-40s, sagging eyes, a voice that always hovered too close. He worked part-time at my store for 6 months before I had to fire him. First it was vape pens going missing, then a whole shipment short. I caught him on the cameras, took it up with corporate, wrote him up the first time, walked him out the second. He didn't argue, just smiled that crooked smile and said, "You know I always liked you, Miss Moore." I thought that was the end of it. 2 weeks later, Taylor mentioned him, said he'd been coming into her store. Just browsing, she told me, didn't buy anything. Smiled weird, said something about how she looked too young to be working nights. I felt it then, that deep, bone-cold chill of something not right. I called her manager, explained the situation. He said he'd keep an eye out, but there was nothing actionable, no threats, no contact, just a guy shopping. I told her to ask for morning shifts. She pushed back, said I was overreacting. I didn't tell her I'd already put in a request to switch her schedule myself. I figured I'd give it a week, let her feel in control. I didn't want to be the mother who smothered. God knows she'd been through enough already. But fear doesn't wait for permission. It creeps in through the cracks while you're trying to do the right thing. I remember that Wednesday, February 7th. The sky was a dull white, the kind of color that makes everything look colorless. Snow piles had turned to black slush, refrozen into jagged heaps. I had just finished inventory at my store, the safe was locked, and I should have gone home an hour earlier. But I stayed. Something felt off. I texted Taylor 3 times. No response. I called. Voicemail. My chest felt tight. Not panic yet, but close. I told my shift lead I had to run an errand. Didn't wait for approval. I just left. Drove fast. Faster than I should have on icy roads. I rehearsed what I'd say. Probably nothing serious. Probably just forgot her phone. But the closer I got, the worse the silence felt. When I turned the corner onto Kenmore, I saw the flashing lights. Police cars, yellow tape, bystanders clustered with phones in hand. My foot slammed the brake. The seatbelt cut across my chest like a slap. I threw the door open before the car fully stopped. I ran, slipped, caught myself on a stranger's bumper. I was screaming her name before I even got to the tape. An officer blocked me. Another stepped in, younger, more careful. Asked who I was, asked her name. They didn't let me inside, just led me around the building, past the dumpsters, to where he was, Thomas Rainey, on his knees, hands cuffed, blood on his face. He didn't look at me, didn't even flinch. I saw the stretcher, the white sheet. My legs gave out before I could scream. The next hours were a blur, police questions, family showing up. My sister holding me like I was going to shatter. I don't remember who told me she was gone, I just remember cold. People think grief is loud, but it's not. It's quiet. It's questions. Why didn't I push harder? Why didn't I drive her that day? Why did I let her go back in? Was pride worth that? The funeral was small. A few co-workers, classmates. Her English teacher read a poem. My hand never left my sister's. Taylor looked too small in that casket. Too young. I couldn't go back to the store. They offered me time off. Said the position was still mine. But I couldn't walk in. Couldn't stand in that break room without seeing her name tag on my desk. I started cleaning houses. Quiet work. No uniforms. No customers. No teenagers to protect. I still check the locks 3 times a night. I still flinch when a phone buzzes. I still keep Taylor's name tag on my dresser, facing up. The letters faded now. Sometimes I think I hear her laugh, but it's always the silence after that breaks me. She was brave. Braver than I ever was. But I wish I taught her that being scared isn't weakness, that listening to the fear is sometimes what saves you. If you're a parent, if you love someone, do you know when to step in? Or do you tell yourself they'll figure it out? At what point does letting go become the mistake you can't take back? There's this lie people like to tell themselves, that the internet forgets, that a viral moment fades just like any other, buried beneath the avalanche of the next meme, the next scandal, the next face. But they don't tell you what happens when your name stops trending but your face doesn't. When you're no longer a person but a punchline waiting to be recognized. I was 17 when it happened to me, and it never really stopped happening. It was a video. Just me dancing behind the Family Dollar where I worked after school. One of those dumb little things kids do when they think no one's watching. Headphones in, doing this awkward little shuffle while taking a break next to the dumpsters. The sky was gray. My name tag was half hanging off. The person filming? Parked across the lot in a car, hidden behind tinted glass. The caption? When retail breaks your brain. 10 million views by the end of the week, 1,000 comments, all of them cruel. I became the joke of the moment, the sad girl shaking her hips next to garbage. The names came fast, the parking lot freak, crackhead cashier, dumpster diva. No one said my real name, but it didn't matter. People started pointing in the store. Some just laughed. Others pulled out phones to see if I'd do it again. I deleted everything. Instagram, Snapchat, my email, stopped answering texts. I moved schools halfway through senior year and still barely made it to graduation. But somehow I stayed at that same Family Dollar. I told myself it was familiar, that the people had already seen me at my worst, so there was no more pretending to do. But the truth was simpler. I had nowhere else to go. By 25, I had faded almost completely. I worked the evening shift most days, wore my hair down to hide my face, and learned how to disappear between shelves. Customers didn't see me unless they needed something. Coworkers knew not to ask about the past. I lived with my mom in a cramped 2-bedroom near 3rd Street. We didn't talk much, paid bills, shared leftovers, and drifted in and out of each other's space like ghosts. It was a Thursday in early October. One of those brittle evenings when the wind slides through the cracks in your jacket and the sunset stains everything a little too orange. The store was almost empty. I was counting the till when the bell above the door rang. I looked up and there he was again, the man in the gray vest. He looked like someone's uncle, mid-40s, maybe older. Short beard, soft jaw, thinning hair. He always came in around the same time, bought odd things. Cans of soup, sinus meds, flashlight batteries. Things people grab when they don't plan to stick around. I'd noticed him before. Noticed how he lingered near the doors too long. How he never made eye contact with the cameras. That night he came straight to the counter. No wandering, no looking. Just tomato bisque and a plastic flashlight in hand. "Evenin'," he said, nodding. Then, "You always wear your hair down." I blinked. "What?" "Your hair. Just wondered if it ever goes up. You've got one of those faces. Would be ashamed to hide it." I didn't respond. Just scanned the items, gave the total. He paid in exact change. When I handed him the receipt, his fingers brushed mine. "Just a little longer than normal." Then he said it, quietly. "You don't remember me, do you?" Something in his voice made my stomach turn. I looked at him. He smiled like we were in on something together. "Gas station out by the high school. You used to work there, right? Few years back." "I've only worked here," I said, steady as I could. He chuckled, too quick. "Huh, guess I've got the wrong girl." He left. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I tried to brush it off, told myself he just made an honest mistake. Customers confuse faces all the time. But that night when my mom picked me up, I saw his green pickup parked across the street. No lights, just sitting there, half hidden behind a newspaper box, waiting. He didn't come in the next few nights. I kept pretending not to look for him through the windows. I told myself I wasn't scared, just careful. Tuesday evening, I walked my old shortcut behind the closed-down clinic, a narrow alleyway with overgrown weeds and busted lights. That's when I saw the truck again. Tucked between a dumpster and a brick wall, engine off, driver's side window half open. He didn't move, just sat there with his hand dangling outside the door, staring, watching. I didn't stop, didn't look back, just kept walking until I hit the main road where the cars passed steady and loud. I didn't say a word to my mom. What could I even tell her? The next shift, he came back. The line was long with folks stocking up on Halloween candy. He waited, then chose my line even though 2 others were open. "You look tired," he said, placing cold burritos and sinus meds on the counter. "Not sleeping?" I didn't meet his eyes. "Do you need a bag?" We used to talk more than this. "No," I said sharply. We didn't. His eyes flinched, just a second, then relaxed again. Memory's funny. Sometimes it needs a little jolt. He paid and left. I went straight to my manager after, asked to switch shifts. She frowned. "Schedules are full until the end of the month. He's just a customer, Shell. You're quiet. People like that sometimes talk to quiet folks. Makes them feel safe." Safe. That word rolled around in my head until it didn't make sense anymore. 2 days later, he came in again. This time, he didn't buy anything. Just walked up and placed a gas station coffee cup on the counter, still warm. "Thought you might need this." I shook my head. "I can't accept that." He raised his hands. "No strings, just something warm. Cold tonight." I waited until he left, then dumped the coffee straight down the mop sink. I tried again with my manager. Told her it wasn't about politeness anymore, that I was starting to feel unsafe. "If it escalates, we'll report it," she said flatly. "Right now, it's awkward, not illegal." Awkward, like my fear was a glitch in social code, not a warning sign. I left that night and saw his truck in our own parking lot this time, 1 row over, pretending to scroll through his phone. I stayed inside until 2 coworkers left and walked out with them. He was gone, but something inside me had cracked wide open. The next morning I opened the store. Shipment was late. I was already tired, halfway through a vending machine muffin on my break when I opened my locker. That's when I saw the note. Folded, tucked neatly behind my name badge. Just 1 sentence. "I know what it feels like to be watched. You were never alone." I couldn't breathe. My knees buckled. I didn't finish my shift, didn't clock out, just left. My legs carried me home like I wasn't part of them. I sat on the couch with every light on. My mom came in late and asked if I was sick. "I'm quitting," I said. She didn't ask why, just nodded like she already knew I was done pretending. I emailed my resignation the next morning. Never picked up my final check. Asked them to mail it. Months passed. I took temp jobs, warehouse sorting, overnight stocking, always using fake names, always keeping pepper spray in my hoodie pocket. I learned the long way home, doubled back, avoided parking lots. I still see trucks that look like his, rusted, green, quiet, and I don't wait to check anymore. I never told anyone the whole story. There's no report, no arrest. Just this memory, tucked away like a receipt no one wants. I remember the way it felt when no one believed me. How the word awkward replaced danger. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't being watched. It's realizing that once you are, no one will care until something happens. So here's the question I ask you. If you're still listening, what would it take for you to believe someone before it's too late? They never tell you how heavy it feels when your home becomes quiet for the first time in years. Not peaceful quiet, not the kind that comes with a sigh of relief, but a kind of silence that presses down on your chest, makes the walls feel too close. That kind of silence has a weight. And when you're used to living with someone whose moods filled every room before he even opened his mouth, silence doesn't feel safe. It feels uncertain. It feels like something's coming. I had been out of that house for 3 months. I had the paperwork, the court orders, the bruises that finally faded. But no one tells you that freedom doesn't come all at once. It comes in moments. Like when you can finally leave a cabinet door open without worrying someone will slam it shut. Or when you cook what you want without calculating whether it'll piss him off. Or when you wake up and realize you slept through the night. Because your body is still learning that no one's going to come storming into the room at 3 a.m. I moved into a 1-bedroom rental outside Mobile, Alabama. Small but enough. I painted the walls yellow because it felt warm, and got a dog from a rescue, Jasper. A mutt with 2 big ears and a bark that made the mailman jump. He made me feel a little less alone. I built routines, yoga at sunrise, emails over black coffee, groceries every Sunday at 3 p.m. when the store was quiet and predictable. Familiarity made me feel less like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Safety to me wasn't about alarms or fences. It was about knowing what to expect. That Sunday in July, it was hot in a way that made your skin stick to itself. I'd forgotten to grab trash bags and sponges the last time I shopped, so I figured I'd make a quick stop at the Family Dollar a few blocks away. I even made a mental note to pick up one of those fake pine-scented air fresheners I hated because the kitchen trash had been lingering. The parking lot was half empty, a single sun-faded pickup truck parked crooked near the entrance. Inside, the place looked like most small dollar stores do. Understaffed, overstocked in all the wrong aisles. A bored girl with a braid sat behind the counter, her eyes glued to her phone. 2 aisles were blocked off with caution tape, and the lights above flickered like they couldn't make up their minds. I grabbed a red basket and headed toward the cleaning aisle. I didn't notice him right away. He wasn't doing anything obvious. Just standing near the end cap where the air fresheners were. Stocky, maybe late 40s, buzz cut, a faded gray shirt stretched over a sunburned neck. He didn't move when I walked past, didn't pretend to be shopping, just stared. You know that feeling you get when you're being watched? Not the paranoid kind, the real one. The kind that makes the hair on your neck rise, like your body knows before your brain does. That's what I felt. But I'd spent 8 years learning to dismiss feelings like that. Too sensitive, too emotional, overreacting. Words I'd heard on loop. So I turned down the next aisle, sponges and plastic gloves. I kept my head down and my steps even. But then he was there again. Same man, closer now. Still no cart, no items, just pretending to study a wall of paper towels. Then he spoke. Low, slurred. Bet you keep the rest of you clean too. My whole body went rigid. There was no mistaking who he was talking to. I didn't answer, didn't make a sound. Just turned and walked away, fast but not running. I looked up at the ceiling as I neared the front of the store, trying to find the security cameras. None were on. Every little red light was dead. The monitors were black. I felt the heat of him behind me again, not touching me, just near enough. I took a left at the refrigerated section, cutting through the snack aisle to loop back to the front. My chest was tight. I tried to breathe, to focus, but I wasn't in a store anymore. I was back in that house. The hallway outside the bathroom. I didn't stop. I didn't answer. I made it outside and sat in my car with the doors locked, hands shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. I wasn't crying. I couldn't. I just felt vacant. I uploaded the video to my private Facebook, captioned it with something long and tired. Not about what he said, but how easy it had been for me to vanish, to be ignored by the cashier, to walk through that entire store and feel like a ghost. I didn't want attention. I just wanted someone to understand what it feels like to survive something and then still not feel safe. I thought maybe a few friends would comment. Instead, messages came. Women I didn't even know. One said he followed her out to her car a few weeks back. Another had seen him loitering outside the store multiple times, just sitting in that same faded truck. One woman messaged me a screenshot of a local police bulletin. His name, his mugshot, prior offenses, misdemeanor harassment. He'd been picked up the next day outside a laundromat a mile away, doing the same thing, just watching. But that didn't fix what broke inside me. A week later, I stood in my kitchen holding an empty paper towel tube and realized I'd rather use napkins than go back to that store. But I made myself. I had to. Because if I didn't, then he still owned a piece of me. The store had a new cashier, young, soft-voiced. She smiled when I walked in. I kept my head up, held my keys like brass knuckles. The man in the next aisle was older, probably harmless, but I still flinched when he passed behind me. I kept scanning for danger, because that's what you do when you've been hunted, even if it was only for a few minutes. At checkout, the girl asked, "You okay, ma'am?" I nodded, lied, paid in cash, drove home. That night I walked Jasper around the block twice. Not because I felt safe, but because I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. That fear doesn't get the final word. People say women should be careful, watch their backs, share their location, carry pepper spray. But what if we ask the world not to be the thing we fear in the first place? What does it say about us when survival means just making it to your car without crying? Some people mistake being invisible for being safe. They think it's the quiet ones who are at peace, tucked away from the chaos, left alone by the noise of the world. But isolation isn't safety. It's just a different kind of drowning. And the scariest part, you start to get used to it like it's something you chose. I didn't become invisible overnight. It was a slow, dull grind. I was never good with people. As a kid, I was the quiet one, the strange one, the boy who sat alone during lunch and never raised his hand in class. I didn't know how to talk to kids my age, and after a while they stopped trying. I grew up in the background, watching, listening, learning how to stay unseen. After high school, I drifted, worked at a tire shop for a few months, then a moving company, then janitorial. Nothing ever stuck. People would say things like, "You gotta put yourself out there more," but they didn't understand that I didn't know how. And after a while, I stopped caring. I had Duke. Duke was a German shepherd, loyal like no person I'd ever met. He didn't care that I barely spoke, didn't mind the silences. When I got home from whatever dead-end job I was doing, he'd be waiting at the door, tail wagging like I was the most important person on earth. He was mine and I was his. For 7 years, he kept me whole. Then, that winter before last, he started limping. At first it was subtle, just a pause before he'd leap onto the couch or a favoring of one leg when he'd run. But it got worse, fast. His back legs gave out. He'd drag them behind him on the tile floor. He stopped eating, stopped barking, and that look in his eyes, like he was still trying to be strong for me even though he was slipping away. I held him in my arms when the vet pushed the syringe, watched his eyes close, felt something inside me shatter. The silence after that was different. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that pressed in on your ears like a vacuum. I didn't leave my apartment for almost a year after that. The world felt too loud, too bright, too full of people I couldn't trust, but I had to eat, had to pay rent. I found a flyer taped to the wall in the laundromat near my building. Family Dollar now hiring, mornings only, stock inventory. That was it. No phone interview, no fancy application. Just come in and ask for Mara. I almost didn't go, but I did. Mara was brisk, middle-aged, and wore her stress in the tightness of her ponytail. She asked if I had retail experience. I said no. She asked if I minded early hours. I said no. She looked me up and down and nodded. "Quiet's good," she said. "Gets more done." I started the next day. It was simple work. Shelves, stock, organize, repeat. I liked it. There was rhythm to it. predictability. Nobody bothered me, and I didn't have to talk unless I wanted to. I got good at zoning aisles, restocking pet food, sweeping behind coolers. Most mornings, I didn't see more than 5 customers before noon. I started to believe maybe I could keep doing this forever. Something small, something quiet. Then came the man in black. It was a gray Tuesday in mid-April. Windy, overcast, the kind of day where everything feels like it's holding its breath. It was around 11:35 when I saw him. Tall, pale, maybe mid-40s, dark jacket, sunglasses inside the store. He wasn't shopping, just standing by the dog treats, staring like he was waiting for something. As I passed, he turned his head slightly. "You look like a dog guy," he said. "German Shepherd, maybe?" I froze. My mouth dried up. "Yeah, I had one. Not anymore." He nodded like he already knew. Stepped closer. "They're prone to spinal issues. Degenerative myelopathy. Starts with the hips, moves up the spine. You can see it coming, but you can't stop it." I stared at him. I hadn't told anyone about Duke, not even Mara. I hadn't spoken his name aloud in months. "You ever wonder why it happened so much?" the man asked, voice low, calm, like they're designed to break. Then he turned and walked out. Didn't buy a thing. I stood there with a can of Alpo in my hand, heart racing. Mara brushed it off. "We get weirdos," she said. "Ignore it." But I couldn't. He came back 2 days later. Same aisle, same silence. Just stood there with his hands in his coat pockets, staring straight ahead. Didn't speak, didn't shop, just waited. I ducked behind the toilet paper display and stayed there until he left. The third time was a Saturday. The store had more customers than usual, and I thought that'd keep him away. It didn't. He stood by the chew toys this time, just close enough that I could see him if I glanced sideways. When our eyes met, he smiled. Not warm, not friendly. Like we shared a joke I didn't get. That night, while closing down, I found something shoved between 2 pet beds. A folded note, no envelope, just a sentence scrawled in tight, slanted handwriting. "Pain has patterns. Some dogs just suffer quieter than others." I didn't sleep. Every sound in my apartment felt like a warning. Pipes creaked like footsteps. I kept the note in the drawer by my bed, couldn't bring myself to throw it out. I checked the locks, twice. Then again. Over the next week, I got worse. Showed up late. Hands trembled when I lifted boxes. My brain couldn't focus. Mara asked if I was okay. I said I was tired. She didn't press. The 5th time I saw him was Thursday. He was outside this time, leaning against the wall just past the entrance, staring through the glass. No sunglasses, just pale gray eyes that looked through me. I turned and walked. Didn't clock in. Didn't say goodbye. I left my apron by the dumpster and didn't look back. That night I packed a duffel bag with the bare minimum. I left a note for the landlord. Took the earliest bus out of Des Moines the next morning. I didn't have a plan, just a way. 2 states over, I found a small town with a diner that rented out rooms upstairs. Paid in cash, took odd jobs, dishwashing, janitor work. I didn't stay long in any place. I didn't make friends. Still, I couldn't shake the fear. Woke up in sweats, heard phantom footsteps, dreamed of Duke, standing in that Family Dollar aisle, legs trembling, stuck in place, just watching me. Sometimes I saw the man's face in dreams. Other times I just heard his voice. They're built to break. 6 months passed, I stopped running. Landed a job at a local animal shelter. Cleaning kennels, mostly. I liked it. Dogs are honest. You know where you stand with them. There's one shepherd, Charlie. Old, slow, with cloudy eyes and shaky legs. I sit with him on my breaks. I talk to him more than I talk to people. Told him about Duke, about the man, about the note I still carry, folded and creased, in my wallet. Pain has patterns. It's true. But healing has them too. You just don't recognize them as easily. I still keep my distance, still feel like I'm half invisible. But I've learned something. Silence doesn't protect you, it isolates you. And loneliness, no matter how familiar, is no shield. The people who survive aren't the ones who vanish. They're the ones who speak, even if their voice shakes, even if no one listens. So here's the question I keep turning over in my head. What happens when you stop ignoring the thing that scares you most and it still finds a way in? They say the worst day of your life doesn't come with a warning. It doesn't wait until you're ready or sober or holding it together. It just shows up, sometimes wrapped in the ordinary, like keys in your hand and a half-finished bottle in the glove box. For me, it came 3 years ago on a cloudless Thursday in October, when I was supposed to pick up my daughter from school. Her name is Harper, 8 years old. She had a gap-toothed grin and wore mismatched socks on purpose. Her laugh, God, her laugh was the kind of sound that made everything else worth enduring. I'd promised her we'd go out for mint chocolate chip ice cream, told her I was turning a corner, that the bad days were behind us, that I was better, that I could be trusted again. But that morning I poured vodka into a coffee cup because the tremors in my hands had come back. Just one to take the edge off, then another, and another. By the time I got to her school, I could barely think straight. I don't remember pulling into the lot. I remember the way the sun hit the dashboard, how the air conditioner clicked like a metronome. Her backpack was in the back seat waiting for her. But she never got in. A flat tire on Central Avenue saved her from seeing me like that. The school called Serena, her mother, when I didn't show. The cops found me slumped over the wheel, engine running. Vodka spilled across the seat. They didn't yell. They didn't need to. My silence did all the talking. I didn't fight when the court took custody. I had nothing to stand on. The months that followed blurred together. I moved into a studio on the edge of Albuquerque, a place where the wind cut through the walls at night. Took the only job I could get, night shift security and stock at a Family Dollar that sat right where the city gave up and the desert took over. The kind of store with flickering ceiling lights and a bathroom you didn't want to step into. It paid enough to eat and not much more. The back office was a windowless box lined with gray filing cabinets no one opened anymore. I spent most nights in front of a wall of old security monitors, half worked. The others played static or blinked out with a soft buzz. The screen burn was so bad every movement left a ghost trail behind it. There was an ashtray on the desk even though we weren't supposed to smoke. Nobody cared. I'd been sober 16 months when it happened. I kept my AA coin in my wallet right behind Harper's old school photo. She had pigtails in that one. I went to meetings when I could. I tried. God, I tried. But nights were the hardest. Just you and the hum of faulty electronics and your past whispering from the corners. Still, I stayed clean. I did my job. And that Sunday night in May started like any other. I clocked in just before midnight, ate a cold sandwich from the vending machine, did my rounds. The place was quiet, aside from a couple late-night regulars and a teenager who tried to pocket a charger. I didn't even report it, just gave him a look and he dropped it. Around 1:30 a.m., I stepped out for a smoke. The wind was up, dry, scraping, carrying dust and a smell like ozone. And that's when I saw the cars. 2 of them parked just outside the light. One was a white SUV, the other a silver sedan. No lights on, no movement at first. Then I saw 3 figures. They were around the SUV's open trunk. One lit a cigarette, another reached in and dragged something out. Heavy, the kind of heavy you don't carry with one hand. I watched from the shadows. My instinct said it was a deal. We'd had that before, drugs, guns, sometimes stolen electronics. But this felt different, the way they stood, the tension in their posture. Then the arguing started. One man shoved another. Loud voices even over the wind, then a blur of motion. Someone lunged. Another man dropped. Not fell. Dropped. Fast. Limbs loose, crumpling like a puppet whose strings had been cut. The kind of drop your body doesn't fake. I froze. My cigarette hit the pavement. I bolted back inside, heart thudding against my ribs like a warning. The backup phone was dead. Of course it was. I grabbed my cell and called 911. "I think I just saw a stabbing," I told them. "Family Dollar on Central. 2 cars. A white SUV and a silver sedan. They were parked behind the store. One guy's down." The operator asked for my name, the address, any identifying features. I rattled off what I could, voice cracking. I peeked out the back window as I spoke. The silver sedan was already gone. The police got there in minutes. I met them out front and led them around back. The white SUV was still there, trunk wide open. Inside was a red-streaked tarp. Blood smeared the lining and dripped along the bumper, disappearing into the dirt. No body, no weapons, just silence and that damned wind. I brought them to the office, showed them the camera feed. The angle was bad, lighting worse. The lot light had blown out 2 nights earlier. Nobody had come to fix it. All the footage showed were silhouettes. One figure moved fast, another collapsed, then 2 shapes fled. No plates, no faces, no sound. "Could have been a fight," one officer muttered. "No," I said. "He didn't just fall. He dropped. Something happened." They nodded, took notes, marked the area with tape. A tech dusted the SUV. They found 1 latex glove, a cigarette butt with lipstick on the filter, a torn piece of fabric, that was it. They said it might be gang-related. Maybe someone owed the wrong person money. They left before dawn. I stayed in that office until the sun rose. Couldn't go home. Couldn't stop thinking about it. The way it happened so fast. The silence that followed. Not even a scream. Just the sound of a man's life ending like it meant nothing. I called out the next night. Took a few days. On Thursday, I tried to put on my uniform. Just stared at it. The collar smelled like coffee and regret. I couldn't bring myself to wear it again. By the end of the month, I left Albuquerque, packed up what little I owned, moved south, found a room above a gas station motel off Route 6. The kind of place people pass without looking twice. Darren, the manager, handed me a mop and said, "Lobby's yours if you want the room." It was enough. I haven't gone back since. Sometimes I wonder about that man, who he was, whether someone's still looking for him, if he left behind a daughter, a mother, or maybe he was the kind of person the world gave up on. Like me once. I kept Officer Ramirez's card in my wallet for a while, folded behind my coin, just in case they called. They didn't. Now I clean floors, wipe down vending machines, go to Tuesday night AA and sit in the back. I still say Harper's name when I'm alone. I imagine her drawing or dancing in the kitchen or just growing up somewhere I'll never see. I hope she's okay. I hope she doesn't remember me how I was. It's been a year and 9 months sober. I still crave sometimes. Still hear the wind outside my window and feel the weight of that night. Still wonder if I could have done something, anything. But I didn't. I ran. That's what breaks me most. Not the violence, not the blood, but the fact that when it happened, I froze. I didn't save anyone. I didn't scream. I didn't stop it. People talk about trauma like it's always loud, but sometimes it's a whisper, a breath between moments, a silence that stays long after the moment is gone. You don't always remember the noise, but you never forget the stillness. I'm not proud of who I was. I'm not sure I'm proud of who I am, but I'm sober. I show up. I clean the floor. I breathe. That's what I've got. And maybe that's enough. What would you do if the worst moment of your life didn't sound like a scream but a whisper? And once you heard it, could you ever live the same again? They say people don't really change. Maybe they just become more of who they already were. I used to believe that. Not anymore. Not after what happened last February. My name's Isa Martinez, 31. Grew up in Roanoke. I've worked at Family Dollar on Jefferson Street for 6 years. It's the kind of job most people overlook. Not glamorous, not something you brag about at parties, if you even get invited to them, but it paid the bills. And more than that, it gave me structure. Something to rely on. Something steady after everything else fell apart. Riley was the first man I ever pictured a future with. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party in Danville. He was magnetic in that easy way, the kind of guy who made you feel seen in a crowded room. I was 26 and still healing from a string of bad decisions dressed up like relationships. Riley felt different. We moved in together within 7 months. A one-bedroom apartment on Gordon Street with creaky stairs and mismatched windows. He'd play guitar in the evenings, barefoot, always a half-empty coffee mug on the floor beside him. There were good days, great ones even, but great doesn't cancel out the quiet unease that started to creep in by year 2. He'd go dark for hours, sometimes overnight. No explanation. Just a shrug or a half-lie when he came back. I wasn't stupid. I saw the messages, the lipstick on the shirt once, the sudden need for space. But love does a thing to you. It makes you rationalize, forgive too quickly, silence your instincts. I thought if I just held on, things would settle. Instead, one afternoon 5 months ago, I came home from work and everything of his was gone. Shoes, laptop, the black duffel he always kept half-packed. Every photo of us was missing off the fridge. All that remained was the spare key sitting alone on the counter. No note, no voicemail, just absence. I didn't fall apart the way people expect. I folded in, picked up more shifts, scrubbed aisles that didn't need scrubbing, pushed myself into routine like it was a life raft. Valentine's season rolled around and the store turned into a parade of pink, plastic roses, stuffed bears with voice boxes, chocolate boxes that looked fancy but tasted cheap. It made me nauseous. Love, I told myself, was just marketing. That Monday morning around 9:30, I was restocking the laundry aisle when I heard the bell above the door. Reflex made me look up, and there he was. Riley, just standing near the entrance. Same denim jacket, same old boots. But his eyes were wrong. The spark I remembered wasn't there. What replaced it was distant, almost dead. He didn't come inside, just stared at me for a second, then turned and walked away. I didn't chase him. I just stood there, gripping a bottle of Tide like it was an anchor. A full minute passed before I moved again. My heart felt like it was trying to escape my ribs. An hour later, an elderly woman approached the counter to return a ring. Said her granddaughter didn't like it. Small, cheap-looking. I almost let it go, until I remembered that we hadn't sold that ring. The only one sold that morning was a locked case special. $180, fake diamond, big box kind of shimmer. I pulled the footage, and there he was. Riley, hoodie up, standing behind her. He paid in cash. Didn't look at the camera. She did the talking. I filed a report, told my district manager. Everyone said not to jump to conclusions, but it wasn't coincidence, it was a message. Riley knew I'd see it. He wanted me to. The next morning I found a note under my windshield, folded once. No envelope, just 5 words in his handwriting. Should have kept your mouth shut. Underneath that, smaller, some things aren't meant to be returned. I didn't go to work that day. Couldn't. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. It wasn't fear in the way people imagine. It was something slower, paralyzing, the kind that wraps around your spine and tightens when you're alone. That night I barely slept. Every creak in the wall sounded like a threat. I checked my locks twice, 3 times, sat with my back against the door. Tuesday morning I showed up to work anyway, told myself I was being paranoid, told myself I needed the hours. The store was slow. Miss Penny from the laundromat came in, bought paper towels. A teenage boy tried to buy a vape cartridge with food stamps. I was fixing shelf tags near the pharmacy when I saw him again. Riley. This time he walked inside like he owned the place. No hoodie, just that damn denim jacket. He scanned the room like he was inventorying it. Then his eyes met mine. He smiled. "Miss this place," he said, like he was talking about an old vacation spot. "Still feels like home." I swallowed. Hard. "You need to leave." He took a step closer. "You still lock your window at night?" His voice was soft. Too soft, like a lullaby with knives in it. My hand slid under the counter, found the panic button, pressed it. He smiled again, then walked out. No hurry. Like he had all the time in the world. The police came. Officer Tolman listened this time, took down everything, the note, the footage, the return scam. He didn't shrug it off. "This guy's trying to get in your head," he said. "Next time, call right away." I didn't go home. Slept at my cousin Gina's house. Spent most of the night staring at her ceiling fan. His words kept circling. "You still lock your window?" He hadn't been inside in months. How would he know? Unless he'd already come back, and I hadn't noticed. That thought was poison. It leaked into everything. I started checking behind the shower curtain, under my bed. I put a chair under the doorknob, double-locked every window, bought a baseball bat I kept by my nightstand. I was surviving, not living. By Friday, my district manager finally called back, told me to take some time, said they'd cover the shifts. I agreed, even though I didn't want to be alone. I started spending mornings at the diner on 15th Street, sat near the front window, drank terrible coffee just to be around people. I hated how much Riley still owned me. I wasn't the person I used to be. I was flinching shadows, waiting for footsteps. Saturday morning, I was brushing my teeth when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't pick up, but I did. "Ms. Martinez, this is Officer Tolman. We picked up someone loitering behind the Family Dollar dumpster." I stopped breathing. "Was it him?" "Yeah, name's Riley. We found a bag with him. Zip ties, a hunting knife, pepper spray." My knees buckled. I sat down on the floor. "He said he was looking for cans," Tolman said. "But we're not buying it. He's in custody. Stalking, harassment, possible intent to commit a violent crime. We'll keep you updated." I hung up and cried in the shower until the water ran cold. Not from fear, from shame. I let him in. I ignored the signs. I told myself it wasn't that bad. They offered to transfer me. New store, 2 towns over. I said yes before they finished the sentence. I gave notice on the apartment, found a small 1-bedroom near the new store, installed extra locks, bought an alarm keychain, changed my number, burned every photo. "It's been 8 months," Riley pled out. "Got probation, therapy, a no-contact order. But paper doesn't stop memories. Some nights I swear I hear his boots on the stairs. Other nights, I dream he's beside me whispering. I went on 1 date since. He asked why I was always checking my phone, why I insisted on public places. I couldn't explain, not in a way that made sense, because it wasn't about him. It was about the version of me Riley broke. People ask why I'm still scared. I tell them the truth. Because monsters don't always wear masks. Sometimes they know how you take your coffee. They know which window sticks. They know where you keep the spare key. I changed everything. But fear has a memory. And not every goodbye means you're safe. What would you do if the person you once loved became the person you feared most? I wasn't supposed to be in Fernley, Nevada. Not really. Definitely not that far west, and definitely not in February. But I'd stopped tracking the shoulds in my life somewhere around mid-December, when I finally accepted the truth that my startup was dead in the water and no amount of pivoting, pitching, or positive thinking could bring it back. By January, my apartment lease in Seattle was up. I sold what I could, boxed the rest, and watched my fiancée, Erin, take her last look at me through the rearview mirror of an Uber. That was the last time I saw her in person. I didn't make a plan. I just drove. rented a compact Hyundai, packed some clothes, my laptop, a backup hard drive with some resumes, and hit the road. I wasn't running toward anything. I just needed to put miles between myself and everything I'd failed at. Nevada was never on the agenda. But when you stop sleeping more than 3 hours at a stretch and your days start blending into each other, you don't really care where the map leads. You just want a place to land for a night. Just enough structure to convince yourself you're still in control of something. It was just past 8:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. The highway signs had thinned out and my phone was down to 3%. I pulled off at exit 48 outside Fernley, figuring I'd grab some gas and a snack, maybe a motel if I could find one without roaches or bullet holes. That's when I saw it. Family Dollar, lit up like a museum exhibit, sitting in a half-empty strip mall beside what looked like an abandoned pet grooming place and a tax prep office with paper over the windows. There was something too quiet about it, the way the lights buzzed just a bit too loudly, the way the wind carried fine dust across the parking lot like it had been doing it forever, uninterrupted. I remember thinking, this place feels staged, like someone pressed pause on time and forgot to hit play again. I parked anyway. Inside, the air smelled like floor cleaner and something sweet but artificial, maybe cheap dryer sheets. The place was cleaner than any Family Dollar I'd ever been in. Too clean. Floors buffed, shelves full but too organized. Nothing out of place. No chatter, no music, just the sound of the HVAC system humming steadily overhead. There was only one employee, a kid, maybe early 20s with a shaved head and pale skin. He stood at the register, didn't say hello, didn't even look at me when I came in. I roamed the aisles slowly, almost pretending I had a real shopping list. Grabbed some beef jerky, a knockoff energy drink, and a phone charger. I felt like I should have left right then, but my instincts were buried under exhaustion and hunger. I told myself I was just paranoid. Burnout will do that. I went up to the counter. The kid scanned my things silently. When he handed me the bag, our fingers touched for half a second, and I swear, I mean this with no exaggeration, his skin was ice cold. Not cool, cold. He looked up once then, and I noticed something strange. His eyes were red around the edges like he hadn't slept in days, but there was no weariness in them, just this distant, unreadable focus. "Have a good night," I said, more out of habit than anything. He didn't respond. I stepped outside and immediately realized I'd forgotten to buy a USB cord to plug into the charger. I turned around, and the glass doors clicked shut behind me. I reached for the handle. Locked. I blinked, tapped it. Nothing. The store had gone completely dark, and in the reflection, behind my own shape, I saw something move inside the aisle. Not the cashier, something else, something taller, motionless, watching. I took 2 steps back and turned. That's when I saw the Durango. An older model, navy blue with fogged-out windows. It was idling now, parked directly beside my rental car. It hadn't been there when I pulled in. And then from inside the Family Dollar I heard the softest sound. A series of taps. 4 of them. Tap, tap, pause, tap. Measured, intentional. I stood there frozen in the middle of that empty parking lot. The wind kicked up again, scraping grit across the pavement. The neon sign above the store buzzed once, flickered, then steadied. Then came the knock on my window. 4 taps, same rhythm. I turned slowly. The passenger window on my car was fogged, but there was something pressed against it, something pale and still. A hand. Human. Or at least it looked human. I didn't hesitate after that. I sprinted to the driver's side, yanked open the door, and jumped in. I didn't even check the back seat. I started the engine and reversed hard out of the space, the tires skidding slightly on the dust-covered pavement. But the Durango didn't move. I looked in the rearview mirror. It was empty now. I swear to God it had been running seconds ago. I saw the exhaust, heard it. Now it just sat there, still and cold like it had been abandoned for weeks. I drove straight out of the lot and turned onto the main road, heading back toward the highway. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. About a mile out, the dash on my rental started glitching. First the fuel gauge, then the Bluetooth display, then the entire console blinked off for 3 full seconds before rebooting. My headlights flickered. Once, twice, and then the engine died. Just cut out. I coasted to a stop on the shoulder, breathing hard, hands gripping the wheel like it could protect me from whatever was out there. My phone? Dead. I got out, popped the hood, like I had any idea what I was doing. I stood there for a second, completely alone on that desert stretch of road, when I saw it again, headlights in the distance, coming toward me. But slowly. Too slowly. Not like a driver passing by. More like someone taking their time. Watching. I slammed the hood, ran to the passenger side and rummaged through the glove box. Nothing useful. Not even a flashlight. I looked back again. The lights were gone. Just desert and darkness again. But something inside me had changed. I wasn't tired anymore. I wasn't even scared. Not in the way you are when you watch a horror movie. This was different. This was clarity. Cold, precise fear. The kind that speaks in absolutes. You're not safe. You weren't supposed to stop here. I walked. Not back toward the Family Dollar, not toward the lights. Just into the darkness. Following the road, hoping for a sign, a gas station, a trucker, a miracle. After 20 minutes, I saw a diner sign ahead. Dim, but real. A truck was parked out front. A man stood outside smoking, looking up at the stars. I practically collapsed in front of him, told him everything in fragments. He listened, then said something I'll never forget. That Family Dollar? It burned down last month. Electrical fire. Whole block still without power. I turned to look back down the road. The stretch I'd just come from. Empty. Pitch black. No building, no lights. Nothing but desert and silence. Weeks later, I still don't know what I walked into. The police didn't find a receipt. My rental car was found exactly where I left it, but it started just fine when the mechanic checked it. No error codes, no drained battery. But I don't sleep like I used to. I keep the lights on. I don't trust automatic doors. I don't trust stores that feel too quiet, too clean. Because sometimes it's not just about bad luck. Sometimes it's about being chosen. And I still don't know what chose me. If a place that shouldn't exist opens its doors to you, do you go in, or do you trust your fear and walk away? My name's Lucas Marin. I'm 29, born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona. And for most of my adult life, I thought I understood how life worked. Go to school, get a job, build something stable. Maybe you don't love every day, but at least you don't have to look over your shoulder. For a while I had that. I worked back-end IT at a mid-sized startup, paid rent on time, cooked dinner with my girlfriend Ava most nights. We talked about maybe getting a dog, trading in my Civic for something newer. I had health insurance, a 401k, the illusion of a future. Then in February, it started to unravel. First, the company folded, completely blindsided us. One week we were planning an office expansion. The next week I was getting a mass email telling me to check with HR for separation paperwork. HR didn't even respond. Half the staff laid off in a day. 3 days later, my badge stopped working. And then, bit by bit, Ava started to check out. I don't blame her, not really. I was depressed, tired, drifting. I watched job applications go unanswered, my savings drain, the future shrink down to nothing. She stuck it out for a little while, but her tone changed. She said I wasn't the same person anymore. Maybe I wasn't. She moved out the second week of April, left her key on the kitchen counter, didn't even take her coffee mug. I remember thinking the silence was louder than her yelling would have been. So I packed what I could into the trunk of my car, 2 duffel bags of clothes, my computer tower, a few framed photos, a shoebox of stuff Ava didn't want to keep. My friend Mark lived in Austin and said he had a couch I could crash on. He even mentioned a possible gig at the content agency he worked for. I figured, Screw it. Starting over is still better than standing still. I left before sunrise and made it nearly 13 hours before stopping. Somewhere just past Sierra Blanca, I pulled into a motel called Desert Lantern Lodge. That night, that's something I still have trouble talking about. But it's what came after that kept me up most nights. The kind of fear that follows you into daylight, that wears a name tag and clocks in right beside you. The Family Dollar on North Lamar didn't seem like the kind of place bad things happened. It was just a job. Simple, low stakes. I stocked shelves, mopped spills, locked up. The store closed at 11 and most nights were uneventful. Just me and Brandy, the assistant manager. She had a kid in daycare and a no-bullshit attitude that I kind of respected. She didn't ask questions when I applied. I think she saw the desperation in my eyes. That Sunday night in late April, we were just about to start closing duties. Brandy was finishing up till counts behind the plexiglass, and I was rearranging batteries in aisle 6 when the front chime buzzed. A guy walked in, hoodie pulled low, face half in shadow, looked like he'd been on foot, no car out front. He carried a beat-up cardboard box and said he wanted to return a fan. I remember the box, filthy, duct-taped around the edges. It didn't even match the model of fans we carried. I told him we couldn't take it back without a receipt or at least a barcode. He didn't argue, didn't get mad, just smiled like he knew something I didn't. Said, "It's already been paid for." Before I could respond, Brandy came out from the back and asked what was going on. When I turned to look at her, and then back to the man, he was gone. Like, gone. The door hadn't chimed again. He didn't walk out. Brandy thought I was messing with her, said maybe I needed a break. That would have been the end of it. Weird moment, shrugged off. But later that night, when I was sweeping aisle 6 again, I found a receipt on the floor, folded neatly, printed from our register, time-stamped from earlier that shift. But the receipt didn't list any items, just my name at the top. My full name. And underneath it, where the subtotal should be, it read, "You never left room 6. This is just what came next." I thought maybe Brandy was pulling some weird prank, but when I showed it to her, her face changed. She said she didn't know how it got there. Said she didn't even see anyone print a receipt at all that night. And she wasn't the type to joke around. The next night I came in early, trying to clear my head. I double-checked every aisle. Nothing strange. But when I went into the break room, I found a Polaroid on top of my lunch bag. No note. Just a photo of my car, the Civic, parked in front of Desert Lantern Lodge. Same motel. Same angle I remembered from the night I stayed there. But no one had taken that photo. Not that I knew of. I never posted it online. Never sent it to anyone. I looked out toward the lot, but there was no one standing there. Just the traffic rolling by, humming, indifferent. When I checked the security feed later, I noticed something worse. The break room camera had glitched for a full minute before I entered. Static, then nothing. That week, things got worse. Every shift, I'd find little signs. The aisle numbers rearranged, the power blinking in the back corner of the store. Random items, things we hadn't stocked in months, showing up on the shelves in pristine condition. An old white box fan that hadn't been sold since winter sat right where the guy had tried to return one. I checked inventory. It didn't exist in the system. I stopped sleeping well. I started showing up to work early just to walk the aisles alone, hoping to prove to myself that I was imagining it. But the evidence kept stacking up. Receipts I hadn't printed, notes in the return bin with lines like, "He's still inside the walls." And one time, I swear I heard whispering near the mop sink, even though the store was empty and locked. Brandy started keeping her pepper spray on her belt. She said something felt off, but she didn't push it. I think she knew I was already close to the edge. One night she mentioned the place used to be a pharmacy decades ago, back before it was a Family Dollar. Said an old security guard had gone missing during a storm in the 90s. They found his flashlight still on in aisle 6, but not him. I thought she was screwing with me until I looked it up myself. The last night I worked there, it all came to a head. I stayed late to retape inventory tags after a system update. Brandy had left early. Her son had a fever. I was alone. The store was locked. I had my headphones in, trying to drown out my nerves, when the emergency exit alarm beeped once, then again, then stopped. I pulled out my headphones, heart racing. Silence. I made my way toward the back door, passing by aisle 6. There he was. Same guy, same hoodie, same cardboard box. But this time he wasn't smiling. He held out the receipt again, just like before. But now there was something written on the back. Check your locker. He left the key. I backed away, but he didn't move. He didn't follow. I ran to the break room, fumbled with the locker dial, yanked it open. Inside wasn't my lunch bag, just an old motel matchbook, Desert Lantern Lodge. And beneath it, a single room key labeled 6. I quit the next morning. Didn't give notice, didn't look back. I told Mark I'd find freelance work. Picked up a remote contract writing product descriptions for a furniture catalog. It pays like garbage, but at least I don't have to leave the apartment. I live on the 2nd floor. The stairwell light stays on all night. There's a security camera pointed straight at my door. Still, sometimes I get receipts under my welcome mat. No items, just my name. Sometimes a room number. Sometimes the words, "He's almost through." I think about going back sometimes, just to see if aisle 6 is still quiet, just to see if the fan is still there. But I never do, because every time I think maybe it's over, I hear a knock on the door that doesn't match the rhythm of my neighbors. And I remember something the guy at the motel said calmly, like it was fact. It's already been paid for. So let me ask you something. If a stranger handed you a receipt with your name on it, no purchases, no explanation, just your name, would you take it? Or would you ask who printed it? And what if no one ever did? Long before that night, I'd already started feeling like I was disappearing. It wasn't sudden, not a dramatic collapse, but a slow erosion. I was 24, living in a borrowed apartment above a tire shop, folding into a routine I hadn't planned for. My name's Riley Madsen, and I used to believe things like instinct were for animals or crime victims in true crime podcasts. That changed the night I closed the Family Dollar on Horizon Ridge Parkway by myself, and came within inches of something I still don't fully understand. I hadn't meant to stay in Henderson this long. My dad died unexpectedly the summer after my 3rd year at ASU, and everything just sort of slid. Tuition bills piled up, my lease fell apart, and the only option left was moving into my Aunt Colleen's place while she stayed with her boyfriend in Phoenix. I told myself it was temporary. Get a job, save a little, maybe re-enroll next spring. That was the plan, but time has a way of sticking when nothing's pulling you forward. Family Dollar was supposed to be filler, a late-night job that gave me the days to get my head on straight. My manager, Lainey, was a sharp-tongued chain smoker who kept her cigarettes in a knockoff Coach purse and called everyone Han without ever sounding affectionate. But she was fair. I worked 6 evenings a week, mostly solo by closing time. I liked the rhythm of it, the way certain customers always came at the same hour, the hum of the cooler fans, the smell of cardboard and cheap detergent. Still, some nights were off. You get to know a space when you're alone in it long enough. I could tell when something was out of place, when the broom was leaning the wrong way, or the shelf labels had been shifted ever so slightly. The backroom buzzer had started chiming at odd times, usually with no one on the other side. Lainey said it was faulty wiring. I didn't argue. But there were moments, usually just past 10:30, when I'd glance out at the lot and catch a car idling in the shadows too long. Once I swore I saw someone just standing there near the dumpsters, not moving, not smoking, just still. That Friday started normal. Hot day, sharp blue sky, slow foot traffic. I had a Red Bull and a granola bar during my 10-minute break. Checked in our inventory shipment, 6 crates, mostly junk. My closing partner called in sick. Stomach flu, Lainey said over the phone, then sighed. You okay flying solo? I told her yeah, even though I wasn't sure. I had done it before, just not lately. Not since things started feeling watched. Around 10:46 p.m., I locked the front doors and started the routine. Wipe the counters, take out trash, count the drawer. Then the buzzer rang. Not the doorbell, not the register, the backroom buzzer. The one that should only go off if someone's at the employee entrance. I stepped into the hallway and checked the camera feed. The screen was grainy and delayed, but clear enough. No one at the door. Just the empty rear loading area and the dumpster to the right. Still, my skin prickled. I locked the hallway door behind me and returned to the counter. Maybe I was just tired. At 10:58, someone knocked at the front. A man in a red hoodie stood on the other side of the glass, squinting against the reflection. Hood up, hands in pockets. I hesitated before unlocking. That night air had cooled fast, and something about the way he shifted from foot to foot made my stomach tighten, but I opened the door. "Sorry," he said, stepping inside. "Didn't realize you were closed." "We're technically still open," I told him, my voice steady. "Just starting closing tasks." He nodded, eyes scanning the shelves. "Car trouble, parked out by the dry cleaner next door. My buddy's on his way, but I left my phone. Figured I'd grab a flashlight, maybe some duct tape." I watched him move, slowly, deliberately, like he was in no rush to leave. The front lights buzzed above him, flickering once. I swallowed. "We've got some flashlights in aisle 4, tapes on the end cap near hardware." He moved that way, dragging his feet a little. I kept my eyes on the monitor. That's when I saw it. Camera 2, rear lot view. A figure crouched by the side door. Low. Still. Holding something long and thin. Metal, maybe. The hoodie guy was just a distraction. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. "Hey," I called down the aisle. "You said your friend's out back?" He paused. Didn't answer right away. "Nah," he finally said. "Just me. He's on the way." His voice was too casual, too quick. I didn't respond. My right hand moved under the counter, fingers curling around the panic button. It didn't beep, didn't click, just a dead silence, same as always. I hoped it worked. I stepped back. "I'll check on that flashlight for you," I said. He gave me a smile. Small, tight. "Appreciate it." I walked to the storage hallway, locked the door behind me, and grabbed the aluminum bat we kept next to the mop sink. I stared at the monitor, watching the man in the hoodie slowly approach the counter again, hands in his pockets. Outside, the crouched figure vanished from the screen. I froze. Then I saw it. Camera 3. Side door. The guy was moving again, fast toward the back employee entrance, the one I'd just locked seconds earlier. He reached it, pulled the handle. Nothing. Locked. He stood there a moment like he wasn't sure what to do, then turned and ran. The hoodie guy inside moved for the exit too. Didn't speak. Didn't even look at me. He slipped through the door and vanished into the night. The police arrived 12 minutes later. They swept the perimeter. Took my statement. I told them everything I could. Deputy Barnett jotted notes like he'd heard it all before. "Looks like they were working together," he said. "Not their first time either. You did the right thing." "Any way to ID them?" He shook his head. "No plates, no facial recognition, probably just passing through, looking for opportunity." That word made me sick. Opportunity. Like I was a moment away from becoming someone's payday. The footage showed everything. One distracts, one breaks in. Clean, practiced, near silent. If I hadn't locked that door when I did. The next few shifts were uneventful. I started bringing pepper spray and keeping the lights brighter. I double-checked locks, stopped stepping out after dark. Every time someone lingered too long by the snack aisle or asked too many questions, I felt my spine tighten. 3 nights later, a woman and her daughter banged on the glass at 11:30 p.m. Their car had stalled. The girl was crying. Rain streaked their faces. I hesitated. My hand hovered over the lock. For half a second, I didn't move. But then I saw the kid's face, red and puffy, clutching a soaked teddy bear. I opened the door. She looked at me like I'd taken too long. I made them hot chocolate in the break room microwave, wrapped the girl in a towel. The mom cried once, softly, thanking me over and over. I just nodded. That was the moment I realized how fear could make you cruel. That hesitation might be what saves you, but sometimes it costs someone else. 2 weeks later, a man checked in with a stack of dollar bills and a voice that didn't match his smile. Said his name was Craig. Said he used to manage a Family Dollar in Tucson. He asked if I worked here alone. Asked what time we usually close. Small talk, nothing too strange, except he kept glancing at the side hallway like he was mapping it. I lied and said my coworker was in the back unloading a truck. I rang him up and watched him leave. He didn't buy anything. That night I stayed past my shift, just watching the cameras. Nothing happened. But I didn't stop checking. I quit the following Monday. I didn't give notice. Just handed Lainey my badge and said I needed to go. She didn't ask why. Maybe she knew. She'd worked that store long enough to sense when someone had seen too much. Now I work at a car rental place near the airport, day shifts only. I carry a pocket knife on my keychain. I never park near alleys, and I never ignore that twinge in my gut. Because what I learned in that fluorescent lit store on Horizon Ridge is that evil doesn't come in with fangs and fire. Sometimes it wears a smile. It asks for help. It leans on your instinct to be kind. And it waits for you to forget to lock the door. The scariest part of that night wasn't what happened. It was what almost did. What's the cost of ignoring your instincts when someone asks for help, but something deep down tells you not to open the door? Long before I ever set foot in Charleston, I used to think that danger wore a mask, something obvious, something you'd recognize by the chill it sent through your spine. But that's not how it works. Not always. Sometimes danger sounds like a friendly voice in the wrong place. Sometimes it looks like kindness that comes too easily. I left Dayton because I had to. I'd filed a complaint, HR, police, all the channels they tell you to trust. The man I reported had tenure, friends, and the kind of smile that people believed over mine. Inconsistent narrative, they said. Lack of corroborating evidence. What that really meant was, he had power, and you didn't. After that, I was the girl who cried wolf. The girl who made things uncomfortable. My lease got yanked on a technicality. Friends stopped replying to texts. I stopped replying to myself. The truth is, when something bad happens and the people around you don't believe it, it doesn't just hurt, it erases you. You stop trusting your memory, your voice, your instincts. You shrink. I packed everything that fit into my Civic, and I left Dayton like a ghost escaping its own house. At first, I told myself I was just taking a trip, a break, a few days to clear my head. But with every hour I drove, it felt more like fleeing. I spent nights in truck stops, diners, once behind a boarded-up thrift store with my coat over the window and pepper spray clutched in my hand. I didn't sleep so much as fade in and out of panic. By the time I got to Charleston, West Virginia, I was out of options. My account balance had 2 digits. I hadn't eaten in a day and a half. I pulled into a parking lot on McCorkle Avenue because the red Family Dollar sign was lit and I saw the big "Now Hiring" sign taped inside the window. I went in hoping I could fill out an application, maybe use the bathroom. I didn't expect Reggie. Reggie was the store manager. Middle-aged, built like a refrigerator, walked with a slight limp. His name tag was scratched and smeared from years of wear, and he carried a ring of keys that clinked like shackles. He didn't ask many questions, looked at my ID, asked if I could lift boxes and work closing shift, and then pointed at the back. "You start tonight if you want." I said yes so fast I sounded desperate, because I was. The job was simple. Stock shelves, clean floors, take out trash. After 9 p.m., when the doors locked, it was just me and the buzz of the soda coolers. That suited me fine. I didn't want people. I didn't want conversation. I wanted quiet, routine, and time to figure out what came next. The store was run down. The left fluorescent light in aisle 3 flickered like a dying star. The supply closet always smelled like bleach and wet cardboard. Some nights the register drawer jammed and Reggie would curse until his voice got hoarse. But it was a job, and it didn't ask anything of me besides showing up. It took me 3 weeks to start noticing the man. Thursdays, always Thursdays, around 8:40 p.m. He'd stroll in like he had time to waste. Tall, maybe 6'1", gray hoodie, dark jeans, worn sneakers. He never bought anything, just wandered through candy, pet supplies, sometimes hovered near the coolers like he was pretending to make a choice. But his eyes, they were always scanning. Not the shelves, the mirrors. At first, I thought he might just be another lonely guy. But there was something too intentional about it. Too slow. Too present. His gait had a rhythm to it, as if he'd walked these aisles before, like he knew where the blind spots were. He didn't speak until the 4th visit. I was restocking toilet paper in aisle 6, crouched down in the narrow strip of space near the end cap. My back was to him. I heard his shoes before his voice. "They always leave you here alone?" His voice was casual, measured, but close. I didn't look up. "Store's closing soon?" No reply. When I glanced toward the front doors, he was already halfway out. The next day, I mentioned him to Reggie. "You get weirdos," he said, unfazed. "It's Family Dollar, just keep the pepper spray on you." He wasn't wrong. Most stores like this attracted oddballs. But something about this guy, it wasn't just his presence. It was his pattern. Same time, same day, same eyes. Then the woman showed up. It was a Thursday again, 10 minutes to close. She was tall, blonde, and dressed like she'd just walked out of a medical office. Sharp blazer, tailored pants, heels too clean for this street. She browsed the shampoo aisle before walking straight toward me while I was folding cardboard in the front. "You work here full-time?" she asked, all warmth. I nodded. "Yeah." "You're good at it. You have this calm about you, that's rare." I didn't respond. I didn't want to encourage it. She smiled wider. "I run a women's resource group over in Huntington. Trauma support, job placement, healing retreats. I talk to a lot of women in these positions. You'd be surprised how many just need someone to say, 'You deserve better.'" I felt a cold pinch in my stomach. She leaned in a little. "If you ever want to talk, I could grab you a coffee. I'll be around for a few days." "I'm okay," I said, forcing my tone flat. Then she said it. Quiet. Almost too quiet. "You're not what I expected." Her eyes stayed on mine for half a second too long. Then she turned and walked away. Something inside me locked down. Later that night, I waited until I was alone and slipped into the dusty back office. The security monitors were old. Grainy black and white feeds, one for each corner of the store. I rewound the footage. There it was, the man arriving first, parking near the dumpsters. 5 minutes later, she pulls in. Same SUV, different entrances. They didn't acknowledge each other on camera, but the timing was too clean, too rehearsed. At 9:03, just after we locked the doors, the feed to the back hallway froze. For 6 seconds, nothing. Then it came back. A figure at the emergency door, trying the handle. Once, twice. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I hid, crawled into the janitor's closet and locked it from the inside. Texted Reggie. "Someone tried the back door. Please come now. 7 minutes." That's all it took. His truck's headlights flooded the lot. I peeked out in time to see the SUV peeling out, tires screeching on the cracked pavement. Reggie was pale when he saw the footage. He called the police. They took statements, checked the tapes, said similar reports had come in from other towns. Always a man and a woman. Always night shifts. Always targeting women alone. I never went back. I stayed at a women's shelter 2 towns over. I slept with a chair jammed under the doorknob. I kept the pepper spray next to my pillow. It's been 3 months. I still don't go anywhere on Thursdays. I still hear her voice. "You're not what I expected." And I wonder, what happens to the women who are what they expected? I had a habit of pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I guess it started in childhood, watching my mother swallow her feelings behind polite smiles, folding laundry like it might fold away the silence in our house. I carried that into adulthood like a sickness I never named. That's how I ended up staying with Scott as long as I did. Not because I didn't know he was lying to me, but because I didn't want to make a mess. And when the truth finally came out, that he'd been cheating for months, that his phone wasn't dead on those nights he never came home, I didn't yell. I didn't throw a single plate. I just woke up one morning, grabbed my keys, and left. The road south felt like something between a breakdown and a cleanse. I drove without music, just the low hum of the tires and my own thoughts chasing each other in circles. I stayed off highways, stuck to the back roads where Spanish moss dripped from the trees and old houses peeked out from behind rusting fences. I didn't know where I was going until I hit the outskirts of Tallahassee and pulled into the parking lot of a cheap motel with a faded sign that read, "Sunset Pines." It was almost charming in the way abandoned things sometimes are. The room was musty but clean enough. I dropped my bag, sat on the bed, and stared at the ceiling fan spinning lazily overhead. It was the first time I'd stopped moving in almost 9 hours, and the stillness made my skin itch. Around 8:45 p.m., I realized I hadn't eaten all day. There was a Family Dollar a few blocks down, still lit up, with a few cars in the lot. I figured I could grab something, crackers, maybe a microwave meal, and avoid the awkwardness of sitting alone at a restaurant. It wasn't about fear, not then, just exhaustion and not wanting to be noticed. When I walked in, the store was nearly empty. A woman in scrubs was at the register, her basket full of paper towels and toilet paper. The cashier, a guy in his 20s with sandy blonde hair and sleepy eyes, gave me a nod. His name tag read, Darren. He looked up from scanning and said, "Cold night to be out." I smiled politely, muttered something about passing through, and ducked into the food aisle. I wasn't planning to stay long. But something about the place, its quiet, the way the overhead lights buzzed just slightly, the warmth compared to the night outside, slowed me down. I wandered longer than I meant to, letting my eyes slide over cans of soup, instant noodles, half-empty shelves of holiday candy. I hadn't realized how tense I'd been until my shoulders started to unknot. When I made it back to the front with a frozen dinner and a travel-sized bottle of wine, the woman was gone. It was just me and Darren now. He didn't say much as he rang up my things, but when he handed me the bag, he smiled a little wider. "You staying local?" I hesitated. "Just a night, passing through." He nodded slowly. "Well, we're here till 10. You need anything else? You come back." It was the way he said "we," like there was someone else working, even though the store had been dead silent since the other customer left. But I didn't question it. I said thanks and pushed through the heavy front doors. I didn't see anyone else on my way back to the motel. The streets were dark and quiet, except for a stray cat darting under a porch. My room was exactly how I left it, and for a few hours, I managed to feel okay. But when I woke up around 2 a.m. to use the bathroom, I saw it, tucked under my windshield wiper. A note, written in narrow block letters. "Glad you made it safe." My stomach turned. I hadn't told anyone where I was staying. Not the name of the motel, not even the street. And yet someone knew. I told myself maybe someone just saw me walk that direction, maybe it was nothing, but I couldn't sleep after that. I pulled the curtain aside and sat in the dark for hours watching the parking lot. Nothing moved. Still, something felt wrong, like I wasn't alone. The next night I told myself I was just being paranoid. That's what people always say, isn't it? I went back to Family Dollar, part of me hoping I'd see Darren again, ask if he left the note, confront him maybe. Just get it out in the open. The store was almost empty again. Darren was behind the counter, but this time he looked different, more alert, like he'd been waiting for something. "You came back," he said, voice low. "Yeah," I replied, placing a bottle of water and some aspirin on the counter. "Couldn't sleep." He smiled again. "Funny, I thought about you last night." I stiffened. He saw it. "Don't worry," he said. "Didn't mean anything weird. You just looked kind of sad." I nodded, forced a smile. "Yeah, well, long week." As he bagged my things, he leaned forward slightly. "You know, I've got a break in 10 minutes. If you want to hang back, talk a bit." I felt my chest tighten. I managed a polite, "Maybe another time." He didn't look offended, just watched me as I walked out. I could feel his eyes on my back the entire way. This time, I checked my car before getting in. No notes, no one in sight. But I drove around the block twice before heading back, just in case. The note came again the next night. This time it was taped to my door. "You don't have to be alone." I didn't go back to the store. I packed my bag, threw it in the car, and sat behind the wheel for 15 minutes trying to figure out what to do. The police? What could I say? That a cashier maybe left me a couple of notes? I hadn't seen him do anything. I hadn't even seen a camera in the lot. I decided I'd leave at dawn, get back on the highway, put some real distance between me and whatever was happening. But around 3:30 a.m. I heard knocking. Not loud, just soft taps. 3 of them. Then silence. I didn't move, just stared at the door, breath caught in my throat. Another 3 taps. A pause. Then the doorknob rattled. That broke the trance. I grabbed my keys, wallet, and ran. No shoes, no jacket. Just bare feet on cold pavement. I didn't look back until I was in the car with the doors locked and the engine running. Someone was standing at the corner of the building, just beyond the light. Not moving, just watching. I drove. I didn't stop until I hit I-10. I didn't go home right away. I stayed with a friend outside Mobile, someone I hadn't seen in years. I told her some version of the story, edited, safer, less alarming. A few days later, I called the Family Dollar store. A woman answered. I asked for Darren. She paused. "There's no one here by that name," she said. I hung up. I checked the receipts I'd kept in my bag. No name listed, just cashier 087. I looked up the store on Google Street View. In the most recent photo, someone was standing just inside the glass door. I swear it was him. Even blurry, even distorted by the reflection, I recognized that face. I never found out who he really was, or how he knew where I was staying. I don't think I want to know. But sometimes I wonder if he's still there, waiting for someone else to walk in just before closing. Maybe someone who won't leave when the doors lock behind them. And maybe next time, he won't wait so long to knock. If someone made you feel truly seen, but only after watching you without your consent, would you still call it loneliness or something far darker? It's strange how quiet the world gets when your life falls apart. I don't mean the kind of silence you get in a library or when you're alone in the woods. I mean that hollow, static silence that follows a moment of total collapse, like the world has paused, unsure what to do with you now. The day I found myself in Dumas, Arkansas, it had been raining off and on for hours. My phone buzzed every now and then with messages I didn't have the heart to read, mostly automated payment reminders or final notices. I hadn't seen my dog in 6 weeks, hadn't been inside a real home in 2 months. I'd been sleeping in my car, chasing Wi-Fi from parking lots, hoping each day might land me a gig that paid enough to get me back on my feet. But every opportunity seemed just out of reach, like chasing headlights on a foggy road. By the time I rolled into town, my gas tank was barely hanging on. I pulled into a Family Dollar on South Main Street with just enough change to maybe buy a microwave burrito or a can of soup. The rain was steady, light but constant, like the sky couldn't be bothered to pour. I remember that detail because when I stepped inside the store, the warmth hit me in a way that made my throat tighten. Fluorescent lights, that dusty citrus cleaner smell, shelves half-stocked and oddly comforting. And behind the register was a woman, maybe 24, blue hoodie, high ponytail, eyes that didn't flinch when they saw me soaking wet and worn thin. "You okay?" she asked. Not like a stranger asking out of politeness, but like someone who's seen enough wreckage to recognize it. "I'm fine," I lied. My voice cracked halfway through the word. She didn't press, just nodded toward the food aisle. "Got stuff marked down in the cooler, if you're hungry." I wandered for a while, picking up items I couldn't afford and putting them back again. The place was nearly empty, a couple of kids near the toys, an older man talking to himself in the seasonal aisle. I lingered near the back, pretending to read ingredients, really just staying dry. I knew they'd kick me out once the clock hit 9, but no one did. The girl behind the counter, Miranda I'd learn later, waited until the customers cleared out, and then walked toward me with a mop in one hand, and a look on her face I couldn't read. "You local?" "No," I said. "Just passing through." She nodded like she already knew that. Then, as casually as if she were offering me a coupon, she said, "My uncle helps people sometimes, when they're in a rough spot." I didn't say anything. "He's in the back, stockroom, if you want to talk to him." Everything in me bristled. I didn't trust offers that came too easy, but I also hadn't eaten in 2 days, hadn't slept dry in even longer, and the thought of not being in that damn car for a night felt like mercy. "Just to talk," I said. She smiled faintly, like I'd passed some kind of test. I followed her to the back hallway, past the employee bathroom and break room with its buzzing fridge. A door was already half open. Inside was a man in his 60s, black slacks, maroon sweater, glasses that caught the light just wrong. He didn't smile, just motioned to the folding chair across from him. "Eric, right?" he asked. I froze. "How'd you—" "Miranda," he said, as if that explained everything. I sat. He watched me like I was a photo he was trying to memorize. Then he said, "I've got a cot, back room, out of the rain, some food, and a little something for the road if you want it." I looked around. Shelves of sealed boxes, unsold Halloween stuff, water damage creeping up the corners of the room. Not much of an offer. But it was dry. It was warm, and I was tired. "What's the catch?" "No catch," he said, too quickly. I should have left then, should have thanked them and walked right back into the rain. But I didn't. That night the cot smelled faintly of bleach and mildew. A plastic tub near my feet had a pack of granola bars and a bottle of water. I ate them slowly, like it made it less desperate. I heard the store doors lock from the outside, and I told myself that was normal. I told myself this was just kindness. Until midnight came and went. I opened my eyes and saw the man, Glenn, through the break room window, standing perfectly still, watching, not moving, not blinking, just watching. I turned away and tried to breathe quietly. It was nothing, just me being paranoid. But I didn't sleep much after that. The next morning my duffel bag had been moved. Nothing missing, not that I could tell, but it had been unzipped. The journal I kept folded in my hoodie. Pages were dog-eared, the pen inside missing. I found the pen later, snapped in half under the cot. I went to confront Miranda. She stood behind the register as if she'd never moved. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "People take what they think you won't miss," she said. I stood there, waiting for her to say more. She didn't. Later that day, Glenn appeared again. This time, he didn't offer a cot. He handed me an envelope. Inside, $300. "No strings?" I asked. "Most people say no the first night," he replied. "Doesn't mean they stick to it." I tried to hand it back. He didn't take it. Just tapped the envelope and walked off. I stayed that night, stupidly. Thought maybe I was imagining it all. I set up my own alarm, kept my bag under my arm while I slept. Just before 2 a.m., I heard the door creak. Not swing open, just creak. And then it stopped. I waited until daylight and made my move. Cot dragged to block the door, I shoved open a side hatch I'd noticed the day before. Emergency delivery access. It wasn't locked, just latched. I slipped out into the back lot, sneakers soaked from the mud, air cold and heavy. I didn't run until I heard footsteps behind me. Slow ones, measured, like someone taking their time. I ducked through a narrow alley, crossed a backyard, banged on the side door of a house with lights on. A woman peeked out through the curtain and I begged her through the glass to call the police. She hesitated. Who wouldn't? I looked like hell. But she did. By the time the cops came, Glenn was gone. No one at the store admitted he worked there. They said Miranda had worked alone. The break room, empty, no cot, no supplies, no record of anything. I didn't argue. I just left. Weeks later, I stayed in a cheap motel 2 counties north. I checked the Family Dollar's reviews out of morbid curiosity. Nothing unusual, all standard. But one review I found through a cache showed up from someone named Theo. Don't stay. Don't say yes. Some offers are harder to walk away from the second night. I never saw that review again. Now, even in daylight, when I pass a Family Dollar, I cross the street. I never accept free help. Never eat food I didn't open. I sleep in my car, yes. But I keep the doors locked. A crowbar in the passenger seat. And every time I close my eyes, I see that man's silhouette at midnight, staring through the glass like I belong to him. So now I ask you, if someone offers you comfort when the world's kicked you to the curb, how do you know it's mercy and not a leash in disguise? Long before I ended up in Tupelo, I thought I understood what fear was. But real fear doesn't come with warning signs. It doesn't yell or threaten or throw punches. It sneaks in with soft words and small silences. My ex knew how to twist my world just enough so I started to believe I was the problem. I stayed with him in Chicago far longer than I should have, convincing myself that love meant survival, and survival meant silence. It took everything in me to leave. I didn't tell a soul where I was going. I took a bus with a fake name on the ticket and only what I could carry in a duffel bag. Tupelo wasn't the plan. It was just where the driver let me off when I told him I needed anywhere quiet. He looked at me like he understood and didn't ask questions. I found a cheap weekly rental near Old Highway 25 and a job at the Family Dollar down the road. No one asked about my past. I gave them my middle name, not my first, and a P.O. box instead of an address. I figured if I kept my head down, I could fade into the routine. Unpack trucks, stock shelves, sweep floors, rinse and repeat. Cindy, the assistant manager, didn't like me from day one. I could tell from how she watched me fold receipts or reface candy bars, like she was waiting for me to slip up. I didn't take it personally. Women like her don't trust quiet women. Makes them wonder what you're hiding. That Tuesday in February, the air had a strange bite to it, like it was going to snow but didn't have the courage. I was pulling inventory from the back room when Cindy walked in with her clipboard like always. "You're training the new girl today," she said, no eye contact. "New girl?" I asked. She nodded. "Name's Danny, starts at 4. I didn't think much of it. We'd been short-staffed for weeks and it wasn't unusual for someone to last just a shift or two before ghosting. Still, I found myself feeling oddly nervous. Not scared, just tight around the edges. Like something was off, but I couldn't name it yet. Danny showed up at 4:10 wearing a red windbreaker and Converse that looked too clean for a Mississippi sidewalk. She looked young, 19, maybe 20. Thin frame, brown eyes, and a polite smile that never reached her eyes. "You Danny?" I asked. "Yeah," she said quickly, brushing her hair behind her ear. Confusing. "Sorry I'm late. The bus got no worries. Let's start with the basics," I said. I kept my tone light, warm even. I remembered how it felt to start fresh, nervous, desperate to do everything right. As we walked the aisles, I showed her how to rotate canned goods and where to stock cleaning supplies. She didn't talk much, but her eyes missed nothing. She watched the way I folded boxes, how I tapped barcodes twice before stacking them. She noticed how I locked my locker even during short breaks. "You ever work retail?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, but I learned fast." Something about the way she said it made my stomach shift. Around 8 p.m., while we were straightening up the shampoo aisle, I asked, "Where are you from?" She hesitated before answering. "Out of state. Moved here recently." "Same," I replied with a soft smile. "Clean slates are hard to come by." Danny let out a strange little laugh. "Yeah. Fresh starts don't erase anything, though, right?" My smile wavered. I wanted to ask what she meant, but I didn't. Something in her tone made my skin itch. We closed at 9. I walked back to the break room to clock out and realized something was off. My name tag, the one I'd clipped to my lanyard at the start of every shift, was gone. I checked the break table, locker, even the restroom. Nothing. And somehow, I already knew I wouldn't find it. The next morning I arrived early, hoping to find the tag somewhere near the register or maybe behind the customer service desk. Instead, I found it sitting directly on top of the punch-in machine, neatly placed, like a display. A yellow sticky note was stuck to it. Employee 1042. Status: watched. My stomach dropped. That number, 1042, was from my old job in Chicago, the one I'd had at the drugstore chain on the north side. I'd never used that number here. It wasn't written anywhere. I hadn't even said it out loud since I got on that bus out of Illinois. I peeled the sticky note off with shaking hands. Cindy walked in from the back. "You okay?" she asked, her usual bite dulled by my expression. "Did you see who left this?" I asked, holding up the note. She glanced at it. "No. Why?" "I trained that new girl yesterday. Danny. I think she left it." Cindy frowned. "What girl?" My heart thudded. "Danny. She started yesterday. You told me to train her." She blinked, then pulled her clipboard from the counter. "We haven't processed any new hires this week." I stared at her. She was here. She wore a red windbreaker, clocked in right after me. "There's no time card with that name, and no one clocked in but you." I pushed past her and went to the office. She followed, clearly annoyed now, but I didn't care. "Pull the footage," I said. She logged in, clicked a few tabs, and we sat there watching the grainy black and white video. From 3:10 p.m. to 9 p.m., I was on camera the entire time, stocking shelves, walking back and forth, alone. No Danny, no red windbreaker, just me. I felt something cold curl inside me, like ice sliding down the back of my ribs. Cindy raised an eyebrow. "You sure you're feeling okay?" I didn't answer. I grabbed my bag and walked out. The cold air slapped me as I stepped into the parking lot, but it barely registered. I passed a wooden utility pole on my way home. Something fluttered on it, paper taped to the side, the wind pulling at the corners. I stopped. It was a photo. Grainy, printed in black and white. A still frame of me standing alone in aisle 3, smiling. Across the top, written in red ink, "She finally talks to me again." That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my apartment with every light on, the photo folded and stuffed in the back of my drawer like it was radioactive. I kept staring at the edges of the room, waiting for shadows to move, waiting for the past to catch up with me. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? Someone left a photo of me that doesn't exist, featuring a girl I trained who doesn't show up on camera, using a number from a job I never listed. I'd sound like I'd cracked. And maybe I had. I hadn't been sleeping much lately. I was always on alert, looking over my shoulder. Maybe this was just trauma bubbling over in weird ways. But trauma doesn't print photos. Trauma doesn't leave notes with employee numbers only I should know. The next morning I skipped work, called in sick. Cindy sounded suspicious, but I didn't care. I walked the 5 blocks to the library and logged onto a public computer, trying to find anything about a girl named Danny matching the one I'd seen. No results. No missing persons. No new hires at any of the other Family Dollars in town. When I searched Employee 1042, a forum post from 2019 popped up on an old retail worker message board. The post was anonymous, titled, "What happens when your number starts showing up again?" It had only a few responses and was quickly archived. The original post said, "I quit my job in Michigan after someone new showed up and called me by my old employee number from Ohio. The name didn't match our roster. The cameras glitched. Then she left a note in my locker. That number was never used again and until she arrived. It was like she brought the past with her. I left town the next day. If you see red, run." No replies after that, no follow-up. I sat back, heart racing. A week ago, this would have sounded like paranoid nonsense, but now, the pattern was too familiar. The red windbreaker, the missing footage, the number. Danny had brought something with her. Or maybe she was something. A message, a memory, a ghost. But I'm not the type to believe in ghosts. I believe in patterns, in people. I believe trauma doesn't vanish. It waits. It waits for quiet places, for new jobs, for shelf stocking and routine. It waits until you think you're safe, and then it knocks. By Friday, I returned to work. Nothing else had happened. No more notes, no new hires, no photos. But something had changed in me. I didn't move the same way down the aisles. I flinched when I heard the door chime. I kept my phone in my pocket at all times, even when it was against policy. Around 6 p.m., I was restocking toothpaste when I heard it, a voice, soft, just behind me. "You locked your locker again." I spun around. No one. The aisle was empty, but the air felt heavier, like breath on my neck. I stood frozen, listening. The shelves groaned faintly, as if something had moved. I walked slowly to the break room. My locker was locked, but taped to it now was a single strip of receipt paper, the kind we use at the register. Scrawled in red ink, "You used to leave it open. Before." I ripped it down and stuffed it in my apron. I told Cindy I had a migraine. She rolled her eyes but let me leave. The sidewalk outside was slick with rain. As I walked home, I passed the utility pole again. There was a new photo. It was me again, this time looking into the mirror above the employee sink. Except in the photo, I wasn't alone. Danny stood behind me, her hand almost touching my shoulder. She wasn't smiling. Neither was I. I didn't go to work the next day, or the day after. I didn't go outside at all. But on Sunday, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail, then another. The third time, I answered. The voice on the other end was quiet, familiar. I couldn't place it. Then it whispered, "You locked me out." I hung up. The phone didn't ring again. That night I sat at the kitchen table and finally pulled out a box I'd buried beneath my sink. Old documents, my old employee badge from Chicago, a folded termination letter, and a photo, the last one taken of me at that job. In the photo, I was standing beside a new hire, a quiet girl, nervous, brown eyes, red windbreaker, Danny. But that couldn't be right. This photo was dated 2018. She hadn't aged a day. I dropped it on the floor, heart racing. I'd trained her before, at a different job, a different life, and I had forgotten. Or maybe I'd forced myself to forget. All this time I thought I was running from a man who hurt me. But maybe, somewhere in that broken escape, I'd locked away more than just trauma. I'd locked away memory, buried it. But memory doesn't like being buried. It wants to be acknowledged, witnessed. She wasn't real, not in the way we think of people. Danny was the version of myself I tried to erase. The girl who stood by while bad things happened, who didn't speak up, who smiled through silence. Now she was back, and she was watching. No matter how far you run, the parts of yourself you try to forget will always follow. Healing doesn't come from erasure. It comes from facing the truth, no matter how painful, and forgiving the version of you that once didn't know better. Because the past isn't a ghost, it's a mirror, and one day you have to look into it and say, I see you now. When you've spent years shrinking yourself to fit in, silence becomes your armor. That was me. Vanessa Cruz, 22, community college done, first real job at Family Dollar on Crenshaw BLVD. I pretended I was fine with minimal interaction. Quiet shift, grays and blues of cheap shelving, hum of fluorescent light. People hardly noticed me and I liked it that way. The less they knew, the safer I felt. I'd spent my school years memorizing how not to draw attention. The way I walked, the pitch of my voice, even how I tucked my hair behind my ear, all of it had been mocked mercilessly. Bullies taught me early that being invisible is better than being noticed. So I came to California to be as small as possible. Thousands of faces around me. No one cared about Vanessa Cruz. On that Thursday, the sky was the same dull gray it always is in early twilight. It was around 6:25 p.m. and I was stocking Gatorade next to the freezer aisle. I was trying to ignore the dull ache behind my eyes from a headache that had started in the morning. I'd been nursing it with water and deep breaths. My focus was on lining the bottles, lightest bottles in front, heavier at the back, and adjusting labels so they faced perfectly forward. That's how I managed. I did tasks with obsessive calmness to keep the chatter in my head from finding words. Then I saw him. Tall, clean-cut, standing perfectly still by the closed freezer door. His gaze was fixed straight ahead, but I felt his eyes on me. A smile on his lips. Not friendly. Too wide. Too precise. He looked almost plastic, like those mannequins in mall windows. He held no cart, no basket, nothing in his hand. He just stood there. I tried to ignore him, focus on the bottles, pretend nothing was weird. 10 minutes passed. Still there. On instinct, I looked straight at him. My breath caught when he stared back. Smile unchanged. He didn't shift weight. He didn't inhale or exhale. He stood like a statue. He felt like he was measuring my heartbeat. I swallowed. Gathered courage. "Can I help you find something, sir?" I asked. He blinked. Slowly. It wasn't natural. Then he nodded once, like a machine, and tilted his head, just slightly, like he was memorizing my face. I saw the name tag he wasn't wearing, the scrub top under his jacket. He had no uniform, no identity I recognized. And then I backed away. Fast. My heart pounded. I tried to steady myself. That was enough for then. He felt like wrongness incarnate, unmoored. I ducked behind the cashier kiosk and pretended to scan a DVD someone had returned. My fingers trembled. I told myself, don't panic, nobody else sees him. Maybe he left. But then a customer whispered to me at the register, "The guy by the freezer, he's giving me chills, hasn't blinked in ages, isn't moving." Alarm spiked in my chest. I looked up at the monitor behind the counter. Camera 2. There he was again, still. Bigger in the tiny frame. Every 10 seconds, flick of the monitor looped static and then the image returned. He still didn't blink or breathe. He was made of stillness. My voice shook when I used the walkie. "There, something's off. James, aisle 4, freezer. Could you check back?" No reply at first. Then, "I'm already back in the freezer aisle. I don't see anyone." Panic hit me. I leaned out to see James walking aisle 4 near the chips. He looked puzzled. I pointed to the monitor. The screen now showed the empty freezer. No visitor, no man, nothing. He checked his walkie. Camera 2 isn't working. That's why the feed is frozen. My hands flew to my mouth. The feed wasn't frozen before. I know what I saw. The screen flicked black, just static. I watched the camera again. There was no movement, no figure, nothing back there. My voice cracked. He waved at me. He looked at me. James frowned. "Vanessa, maybe you're hallucinating? Headache?" I nodded because I didn't have words. The rest of the shift passed in total dread. I watched every camera feed I could. Nothing showed him again. The freezer looked sterile. No one there. When I closed up, I didn't eat lunch, just walked to my car shaking. I told myself, maybe next day, it will be gone. A trick of the eye. But when I opened my locker that morning, I froze. On the top shelf, there was a half-melted red Gatorade bottle, liquid pooled inside, labeled damp with condensation. Written in black Sharpie across its label, "Thanks for looking at me." That's when I knew none of it was coincidence. The Gatorade bottle sat in my locker like an accusation. I picked it up with trembling fingers, my name written in wide block letters etched in Sharpie on the plastic. The red liquid looked like diluted blood in the bottom, streaking shadows in the fluorescent light of the locker room. I didn't sleep the night before, and I didn't sleep that night either. I took it to the bathroom and stared into the mirror, my reflection under-eyed and shaky. I tried to ask, who does this? Who waits in a store aisle, silent and still? Who writes a message on a bottle, melting something when no bulbs could heat it? My breath came ragged. I wanted to dump the bottle into the sink, but instead I just opened the window over the sink and left it perched on the sill. Next morning, the bottle was gone. I called in sick. I didn't go back that day. I didn't want to face the empty freezer aisle, the silent man who acted alive enough to wave. I didn't want James to look at me like I was losing my mind. When I finally picked up a snack in the kitchen at my apartment, I binged water and bread. Didn't prepare myself for people's questions. Instead, I went offline for hours. My texts went unanswered. I resolved never to return to the store. But 2 days later, I got a text from James. "Hey Ness, everyone's asking where you are. I keep telling them you'll be back soon. If you need a break, call me. No one's mad." It was gentle, caring. Not everyone was unkind. I realized I wanted to go back, not because I wanted to brave it, but because I had to know what was real. So I went in again that evening. I walked through the sliding glass front doors, heart pounding. James greeted me with cautious eyes. I held myself steady in the fluorescent light as we walked to the freezer aisle together. It was empty. No man, no footprints, no sign of a person ever standing there. The freezers hummed quietly. The red insulation smell scented air, not freezer burned, not strange. I pointed, showed him. He scanned, shrugged. Nothing. He flicked the light switch for camera 2. They still haven't fixed the feed. We covered with another camera. Never showed anyone there. I looked again. Still nothing. But in the corner of the aisle, faint smudges of something smeared on the tile. I knelt down carefully. I swiped with a corner of my napkin. Red smear. A smear of Gatorade. Dried. Set into the grout between tiles. James knelt beside me, his voice low. "Someone pranked you with the edge of the bottle? Drew on label? No big deal." Maybe. But the static on the screen, the smiling man, the way he looked at me as though he saw everything. I stood up shaking, told James I had to go. He nodded. "Take care, Ness." I left, heart pounding. But I realized something. That aisle wasn't empty once, in my mind or in reality. Something lived there. Something wanted to be seen. I didn't go back to the store for a week after that. I told James I needed time off and he didn't push. I think he thought it was stress. Or maybe he saw the fear under my skin and didn't want to ask questions he couldn't answer. But I couldn't stop thinking about the man. His smile, the static camera, the message on the Gatorade bottle, the red smear on the floor that no one else seemed to care about. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, frozen in place, but somehow aware. Like something ancient, pretending to be a person. By the 6th night, I started dreaming of the freezer aisle. In the dream, the lights buzzed overhead, but the aisle was dead silent. He stood there, perfectly still, just as before. But this time, his smile cracked open wider than a human mouth should go. And when I turned to run, I heard him say without moving his lips, "You saw me. That makes you mine." I woke up shaking. I couldn't keep pretending it didn't happen. But I didn't want to talk to my parents or friends either. They wouldn't believe me. They'd just ask if I was back on anxiety meds, or if I'd stopped sleeping again. So I decided to go back. Not to work, just to visit, on my own terms. I needed to see the freezer aisle again when I wasn't being watched. It was a Thursday, exactly 2 weeks since it happened. I waited until almost closing when the store was mostly empty. I put on my uniform hoodie, hood up, head down, and walked in pretending to shop. The lights buzzed overhead like always. A cart squeaked near the front. A couple of teens were giggling by the candy aisle. I made my way slowly to the freezers. When I turned the corner, I saw it. The man was there, just like before. Same position, same clothes, no shopping cart, just standing, perfectly still. I stopped mid-step. Everything in my body screamed to turn around, but I couldn't move. He was staring at the glass of the freezer now, not at me. His reflection stared back at him and smiled. Then he turned his head toward me. His smile didn't change. I blinked. He was gone, vanished, no sound, no blur, just not there. Only his reflection remained for half a second longer before that too, vanished. My legs gave out. I leaned against the freezer door to catch my breath. I couldn't feel my hands. The cold of the glass seeped into my shoulder. I closed my eyes, counted to 5. When I opened them again, a red Gatorade bottle was sitting inside the freezer, right in the center. I didn't open the door, I ran. I called out of work again. I lied, said I had the flu. But the truth was, I couldn't trust what I was seeing anymore. At first I tried convincing myself it was hallucination, some kind of stress reaction. But the physical things, the bottle, the smear on the floor, the way customers also saw him that first night, it didn't add up. And I wasn't the only one rattled. On Friday, James texted again. James, hey, weird question. Did you leave a Gatorade in the freezer before you left the other night? Me, no. Why? James, there was one sitting dead center on the shelf, cap off, like it had been opened. Red leaked down the inside. Nobody stocked it. He included a photo. I stared at it, heart pounding. The label had no writing this time, just fogged plastic, but it was the same bottle. I knew it. Something about the way it sat there, placed, not dropped. Me, you didn't see anyone leave it? James, nope, showed up right before close. We checked the cameras again. And guess what? I didn't reply fast enough, so he sent another text. James, freezer cam was fine until 6:20 p.m., then static, whole 30 minutes gone. Again. I couldn't breathe. Me, you believe me now? He didn't respond right away. Then, James, I believe something is happening. That was all I needed to hear. The next night I came back, not to shop, not to work, to wait. I brought a notebook, a water bottle. I sat near the toy aisle where I had a view of the freezer. I stayed for over an hour. Nothing happened. No one showed. And then, right before closing, the lights dimmed for a second, just a flicker, and I heard the sound of the freezer door squeaking open. When I peeked around the corner, there was no one there, but the door was ajar, and there were bare footprints, wet, red-tinted, leading away from the freezer into the back of the store. I left without saying a word. They fired me 2 weeks later, not officially, but the schedule stopped including my name, and the calls stopped coming. I didn't protest. I didn't want to go back. But the dreams didn't stop. Always the same. Him standing by the freezer, smiling, unmoving, watching me breathe. A month passed. I changed my number, stopped responding to texts. I started going out less. Grocery deliveries only, lights on all night. Then one morning I found something on my doorstep. A Family Dollar shopping bag. Inside it, one red Gatorade bottle. No label. Just a smiley face drawn in Sharpie, wide and crooked across the plastic. I poured it down the drain. Moved a week later, And I've never told anyone outside this story. Because here's the thing. I don't know what he was. A ghost, a spirit, a leftover echo of something broken in the world. But I do know what he wanted. He wanted to be seen. And when you do see him, you can't unsee him. He follows you in reflections, in freezer doors, in shadows under fluorescent light. That's why I avoid big stores now. I never go near the freezer aisle, because some things want to be looked at. And once you give them your eyes and they don't forget, some presences feed on attention. Not everything strange demands explanation. Sometimes it demands distance. In a world full of watchers, remember this: not every gaze deserves to be returned. Grief changes a man in ways no one talks about. Not the crying in the shower kind. Not the sad songs and empty frames. I mean the quiet rot. The parts that hollow out behind your ribs and make you forget what life felt like before everything burned down. 8 months ago, I lost her. Camille. She died in a fire that should have taken both of us, but didn't. And no, I'm not some tragic hero who clawed his way out to go get help. I ran. I froze. I lived. And I've hated myself every morning since. I moved to Macon, Georgia because it was nowhere. I didn't want faces that knew me, or people who asked, "How are you holding up?" Like they wanted the short version. I wanted to disappear into a routine. Something dry and dead and safe. Family Dollar on Maple Bluff had a now hiring sign. I walked in. Didn't say much. Got hired for shifts nobody wanted. Closing, stocking, inventory. I liked it. The fluorescent lights, the hum of the AC unit, the plasticky smell of cheap merchandise. Nobody expected much. Nobody knew my name after 5 weeks. Just, "Hey boss," or "Marcus, can you unlock the back?" That's all I needed. The day it started was hot, sticky, and gray, like the sky couldn't decide whether to rain or burst into flames. August in Georgia. I remember wiping the sweat from my neck with the sleeve of my hoodie, the same one I wore the night she died. I couldn't let it go. It still smelled faintly of smoke even after all these washes. I was pulling a double, not by choice, but because Maddie called out with a migraine. I didn't mind. A quiet store was my kind of company. Around 6:50, I did my routine check. Front locked, aisles clean, back room stocked, door locked. I always double-locked it. Always. That room creeped me out from the beginning. Too quiet. Too windowless. It was like the place swallowed sound. Around 8:30, I was mopping the drink spill near the coolers when I glanced toward the hallway that led to the back. The door was open. Just slightly. Not wide. Just off. And I knew. Absolutely knew. I had locked it. I set the mop down. The store was dead quiet. No customers. No employees. I wiped my palms on my jeans and walked slowly toward the hallway. It smelled different, staler, heavier, like wet drywall and dust. I flicked the overhead light on, but it barely helped. The cheap bulbs buzzed, dim and tired. I said, "Hey, store closes in 30, employees only back there." No answer, no sound. I pushed the door open, half expecting a raccoon or maybe a late vendor. But the room was empty, except for a note, folded neatly and placed right on top of that day's shipment log. I didn't want to pick it up. Something in my stomach was already twisting. But I did. It said, "You said you'd keep me safe. Why did you leave me behind?" The handwriting, it was hers. I stared at it for too long, blinking like that would make the ink change. Like maybe I was hallucinating. But no, it was her. The curve of the letters, the way she always dotted her I halfway between the line. I shoved the note in my hoodie pocket, locked the back room tight, and told myself it was a coincidence. A mistake. Some sick prank. No one here knew me. No one here could know me. Except the log it was sitting on. It had today's date. The rest of the shift dragged like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. Every creak in the ceiling tiles made me twitch. Every pop of the old fridge compressor sounded like a whisper. By 9:10 p.m., the store was quiet. Front lights dimmed, only emergency strips glowing in that low amber way that makes everything feel like a hospital. I was finishing the register closeout when I heard it. Knock, 3 of them. Slow, heavy, coming from the backroom door. I froze. My hands were still on the cash drawer. I looked up at the mirror above the register, like it could somehow reflect down the hallway. It didn't. I said aloud, "Whoever that is, this ain't funny. Store's closed." Nothing. The knock didn't repeat, but something scraped. A long, dragging sound like someone sliding a shoe across linoleum. I grabbed the mop handle again, dumb as it sounds, and moved slowly down the hallway. The door was closed this time. Shut tight. I gripped the handle. Last warning. You better not make me call the cops. Still nothing. I yanked the door open. Nobody. But the dust on the backroom floor told a different story. There was a clear shape there like someone had been lying down. Arms at their side, feet pointed out, like a chalk outline without the chalk. And then my phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. Just one line. "You didn't even come back for my body." My heart stopped. Literally. I stood there, phone in hand, jaw clenched, willing myself not to scream. The thing about guilt is, it never lets go. I told the fire department I had tried to find her. I told everyone I ran for help. Truth is, I heard her screaming my name and I ran the other way. And now? She knew. The lights cut out all at once. Not a flicker. Just gone. Darkness swallowed the entire store, except for the red exit sign over the front. And in the dark I heard it. Footsteps. Bare, soft, close, not walking, not running, just approaching, and then a whisper. So low it sounded like it came from inside my own head. "Stay with me this time." I didn't wait. I dropped the mop handle, sprinted down the hallway, slammed open the front doors, and didn't stop running until I hit the end of the block. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, because there was no way I was going back to the apartment, and just stared at the wall like it might blink back at me. My phone was on the nightstand. I turned it off after the 3rd time it lit up with no caller ID, no voicemail, no texts. Just the silence between rings and that small, choking fear that if I answered, I'd hear her voice. I knew what people would say. Trauma, grief, hallucinations. That what I saw, or thought I saw, was my mind's way of punishing me for what I did, or didn't do. But I know what I saw, and I know that note was real. It was still in my hoodie pocket, the ink slightly smeared from where my fingers had pressed into the fold. I didn't go in to work the next day. Didn't call either. I just didn't go. It wasn't until almost noon that I got a text from Martin, the daytime assistant manager. "Hey man, you good? Store was weird when I got in. Call me." I didn't respond. But 10 minutes later he sent another. "Did you leave a pair of burned shoes in the back room? There's this weird ash writing on the wall. Cops came and took pics. Said there wasn't any forced entry." Burned shoes, writing, ashes. I couldn't breathe for a full minute. I remembered those shoes. Camille had this pair of white ballet flats she wore until they were practically gray. One of them had a little burn mark on the heel where she accidentally backed up into a campfire once. She laughed about it for days. Called them her scar shoes. I had to see for myself. By nightfall, I found myself parked outside the store again. I knew it was insane. I could have just kept driving, started over somewhere else again. God knows I'd done it before. But the thing about guilt is that it doesn't stay buried. It scratches at the coffin lid until you hear it in your sleep. So I waited until after closing. Martin left around 9:30. I watched from across the street. He turned out the front lights, locked the door, and drove off in his old Nissan with the busted muffler. After the taillights disappeared, I crossed the street. The moment I stepped onto the sidewalk, the air shifted, heavy again like the heat had teeth. I didn't have keys anymore, but the side delivery door was propped open with a wedge. Probably some lazy vendor or stock boy earlier in the day. I slipped inside and closed it behind me. The store was dark. Not unlit. Dark. As in the kind that feels full. I moved down the aisle with my phone flashlight, the shelves casting long shadows like hands stretching. The silence felt alive, buzzing in my ears. I reached the backroom hallway. The door was wide open now. That's when I saw the writing. It was on the back wall, above the old wire rack where we kept overstock light bulbs and mop heads. Written in a black, flaking substance that could have only been ash, it said, "He promised he'd wait." Beneath it, perfectly lined up, were Camille's shoes. Half-burned, melted at the toes, singed at the soles. I staggered back. I wanted to run again, but I didn't. Not this time. I sat down on an overturned box of toilet paper packs and stared at the shoes. For the first time in 8 months, I didn't run from the memory. I let it in. The night of the fire, we'd been fighting. Something dumb. Money, maybe. Plans. I don't remember. But I do remember walking outside to cool off. She was still inside when the electrical fire started, and I didn't go back in. I told myself the smoke was too thick, that I had to get help, that she was probably already behind me. I told myself everything except the truth. I was scared. I left her behind. The note, the knocking, the text. It wasn't just guilt. It was a voice, pushing me to admit what I'd buried under silence and routine. I stood up, and for the first time, I said it aloud. "I'm sorry, Cam. I didn't mean to leave you. I didn't know what to do." Silence, but the air in the room seemed to shift. Lighter. Not gone, but less suffocating. And then behind me, I heard a soft voice. "You were supposed to come back." I turned. No one. But I wasn't scared this time. "I know," I said quietly. I should have tried. There was nothing else. Just silence. Real silence. Not the buzzing, suffocating dread from before. When I stepped out into the hallway, the air was still. Normal. No whispers. No footsteps. Just the hum of the fridges and the flickering exit sign overhead. I didn't take the shoes. I left them there, like some kind of memorial. The next morning I called the district manager and quit. No explanation. He didn't ask. I don't think I was supposed to stay there any longer anyway. I left Macon 2 weeks later. Didn't pack much. Just a duffel of clothes, my wallet, and the old hoodie I'd worn too many days in a row. I'd meant to leave it behind, to finally bury it with the rest of what I couldn't carry. But in the end, I brought it with me. Not because I needed the weight, but because I'd finally stopped blaming it. Grief isn't a straight line. Nobody tells you that. It's not a ladder or a tunnel with a light at the end. Some days you breathe fine, and other days you wake up in the dark, back at the beginning. But something shifted that night in the back room. Not because I saw a ghost. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I'm not even sure anymore. What I do know is that for the first time since the fire, I stopped lying to myself. That mattered. I drove west, stayed in a small town outside Birmingham for a bit. Got work painting fences and fixing porches for old folks. Quiet jobs, paid in cash, no questions. That was enough. But it wasn't over yet. A month after I left Macon, I got a call from an unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't have answered, but that day I did. A woman's voice came through the line. "Marcus Fielding?" I hesitated. "Yeah. This is Detective Stokes. I'm calling about an incident at the Family Dollar you used to manage. You were listed as a prior employee." My chest tightened. "What kind of incident?" "We had a break-in last night, not a theft, but the new shift manager found the back room trashed. Inventory pulled apart, lights shattered, and a wall covered in soot. There was also a note. Folded. Handwritten. Left in the same spot you described in your original statement. I didn't say anything. She went on, cautious now. Means? It said, you weren't the only one who ran. Do you know what that I sat on the motel bed, staring out at the orange sky? The sun had just dipped behind the trees. Camille used to call that burn hour, when everything looked like it was lit from inside. I said, no, ma'am, I don't. She thanked me and hung up, but I couldn't stop thinking about that message. You weren't the only one who ran. Maybe it wasn't just about me. Maybe the thing that haunted that store wasn't only tied to Camille. Maybe it had more to do with the place itself, its silence, its darkness, its collection of people trying to leave something behind. People like me. Maybe Camille wasn't the only ghost in that room, or maybe, just maybe, it was her final message to let me go, telling me she understood, telling me I wasn't the only person in the world who'd made a mistake they couldn't take back. I didn't go back to Macon, but that day I took off the hoodie, folded it neatly, placed it in the donation bin outside the church by the diner. It was time. They say the past never dies, that it clings to the places we leave it. But I don't think that's quite true. I think it waits for us to face it, not to punish us, but to show us what we've been carrying, what we've refused to feel, what we must finally release. You can't change what you ran from, but you can choose whether to keep running or turn around and face it. Sometimes redemption isn't about fixing the past, it's about acknowledging it, owning it, and finally letting it rest. Silence used to feel like a burden. In college, every empty moment echoed with anxiety. So many deadlines, so much breathing space to overthink. But after my breakdown during finals, I stayed holed up in my dorm room for 3 days. I realized noise could be worse. Too many voices, expectations, small talk. I craved quiet more than anything. When I dropped out, I moved back to Billings, Montana, home with my grandfather. He's gentle, kind, but he's from a generation where mental health struggles were swept under the rug. It's why I grabbed the night shift at Family Dollar. A steady paycheck, manageable schedule, minimal interaction. I favored the closing shift. Mostly silence, predictable rhythm, no pressure to be social. The regulars were quiet too. One of them was Mr. James, mid-50s, wore a gray wool coat year-row, round, clean shoes, always the same items, canned soup, a crossword puzzle book, sometimes gum. He came in 3 times weekly around closing, nodded, paid with cash, no small talk. I found his routine oddly comforting. Then, one snowy Thursday evening in January 14th, the pattern shifted. He showed up early, at 8:30 p.m., which threw me off. Instead of heading to soup, he paused at the Valentine's rack, lingering by pink socks with hearts. I was at the register scanning bubblegum packs when I offered my usual greeting. "Evening, Mr. James." He didn't respond, just stared at the socks, then turned to me and asked softly, "You have any allergies?" I blinked. What? "To flowers," he clarified. "Lilies. Some people react badly." I shook my head uncertainly. "Not that I know of." He nodded as if filing away some memory, then left without saying a word. I brushed it off. Maybe he felt nostalgic. Maybe those socks reminded him of someone. Silly. Then on Friday I found it. An envelope taped beneath the counter ledge just out of sight. My name handwritten on it, shaky cursive. I hesitated, then opened it. A photo of me leaving the store through the back door the night before. The timestamp was faint but visible. I didn't know when it was taken. The scariest part, I hadn't known anyone was out there. On the back, someone had written, "You look safest in silence." My stomach clenched. There are no cameras back there. I prided myself on noticing everything. I checked. Who took that? When? I froze. Couldn't eat. Couldn't move for a while. I slid the envelope back under the counter, taped it deeper so nobody would find it. I didn't report it. I didn't want to be that girl again. Dramatic, paranoid, fragile. Then Saturday morning I came in early to sort inventory. Near the employee lockers, tucked by the wall, was a small bouquet of lilies. No note, no identification, just white petals curled against the cellophane wrapper, silent. I backed off, heart racing. Who would leave lilies for me? Why lilies, after his question? I didn't report that either. I left them there overnight, then moved them outside before opening. Went home pretending everything was fine. But that night, Sunday, I found Mr. James again, quiet as a shadow, just standing by the doorway in his wool coat. No items, no greeting. I froze, voice trembling. "Someone left me a photo," I said bluntly, "under the counter. Do you know anything?" He looked at me and smiled for the first time, warm, sad. "I didn't think you'd remember me," he said. "At college, library desk. I asked where the poetry section was. You helped, no one ever helped." I stared, my voice stuck in my throat. You came to college?" He nodded. I waited. He paused. "You were quiet. I liked that." My chest tightened. "That was years ago." He shrugged. I waited. Then he turned and walked out without buying a thing. I thumb-locked the door behind him. The bell still chimed as he left. I called the police that night. Told them about the photo, the flowers, and Mr. James. They reviewed the footage. He was never in the store. I had been alone the whole time, talking to nothing. When I came in the next morning, taped to my locker was one final note. "Don't worry, I'm always nearby. I only visit at night now, just like you." It was unsigned. After the locker note, I stopped sleeping well. I kept my bedroom light on, kept the blinds closed. I started watching people closer at the store, especially anyone I didn't recognize. I wasn't scared exactly, not in the monster under the bed way. It was worse. It felt personal, like someone had cracked into a memory I'd buried and used it to crawl closer. I tried to remember him. The library desk, poetry section. Did that really happen? The truth? It probably did. I worked part-time at the college library during my sophomore year. We had students, professors, and walk-ins from the town, all kinds of people. I had a habit of being overly polite back then, rehearsed smiles, a soft voice. I made an effort, maybe too much. I was trying to make myself useful, to matter. Maybe I helped him find a book. Maybe I said thank you. But that doesn't give someone the right to follow you, watch you, pretend they know you. I wanted to go to the police again, but what would I say? That a man possibly imagined a connection with me? That he left me lilies and a photo and vanished like a ghost? There wasn't even a record of him on security footage. Nothing to investigate. So instead, I started closing early. 10 minutes before we technically shut the doors, I'd lock up and turn off the lights. If anyone asked, I blamed short staffing. No one cared. One night around 8:45, I walked to the back door to take the trash out. My pocket box cutter was clutched tightly in my hoodie sleeve. The alley behind the store was dim, snow piled against the wall. I stayed alert, stepped softly. When I opened the dumpster lid, I saw it there, resting on the trash bags like a gift placed carefully. A copy of Leaves of Grass, water damaged but intact. I didn't touch it. I just stared at it, my heart thudding in my ears. When I got back inside, I bolted the back door shut and texted my shift supervisor, said I was sick, left early. That night, I stood in my bathroom mirror, staring at myself for a long time. My face looked pale, tired. I didn't recognize the woman staring back. I whispered softly to my reflection, "You were kind once, but kindness isn't always safe." I decided to visit the campus library the following day. I hadn't stepped foot on university grounds since the breakdown. Just walking past the parking structure made my palms sweat. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Validation, closure? A real name for the man who called himself Mr. James? The woman at the desk was younger than me, maybe a freshman. She looked bored. I asked if there was an archive of old library visitor logs, especially community users from around 2019 or 2020. She gave me a blank look and pointed me to the circulation desk supervisor. The supervisor was kinder. She remembered me, vaguely. Ava, right? The quiet one with the short hair. You worked Fridays and Tuesdays. You were always early. I smiled, hollow. About poetry? Do you remember a man? Mid-50s, wore a coat all the time. Came in to ask. She frowned, tapping a pencil on the counter. Walk-ins use our poetry collection. Why? That doesn't really narrow it down. A lot of, I think he remembered me, I said. I think he's been watching me. Her face shifted, not into fear, but concern, like she didn't want to say the next thing. There was someone, she said slowly. He didn't give a real name. We started calling him Mr. Whitman because he'd always quote Whitman lines under his breath. He'd linger in the aisles, but he wasn't disruptive, just odd. Always sat in the same corner chair near the back of the poetry stacks. I think campus security asked him to leave once. Too many complaints. My throat tightened. Do you know what happened to him? She shook her head. Again. He just stopped showing up. One day, he was gone. Never signed in. That evening, when I got home, I couldn't go inside. I sat in my car in front of the house, watching my reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't move for nearly an hour. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt small. I was starting to understand that maybe he hadn't just imagined a connection. Maybe he'd built a whole version of me in his head. And maybe I'd accidentally given him the blueprint. I didn't go back to work right away. I told my manager I needed a break. Stress, family stuff, whatever excuse she'd accept without asking follow-ups. I didn't leave the house for days, except to walk the perimeter every night with a flashlight, like that would make me feel more in control. It didn't. Nothing did. One night around 2 a.m., I woke up to what I thought was someone knocking. Soft, deliberate taps, like they didn't want to be heard by anyone but me. I grabbed the flashlight and a baseball bat my grandpa kept under the bed. Creaked open the front door. No one there. But sitting on the porch, directly in the center, was a folded sheet of lined paper. My name was written on the outside. Inside, thank you for seeing me. That was the last time. That was it. No signature, no photo, no weird quotes. I should have felt relief, closure maybe, but it didn't feel final. It felt like a shift, like a door had closed but a window somewhere behind me stayed open. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I just sat by the window watching the streetlights flicker in the snow, wondering if I'd imagined the whole thing. The next week I went back to work. Everything felt dimmer. I couldn't quite explain it. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder than usual, and every cough or shuffle from the back of the store made my skin crawl. But the real change was me. I'd stopped zoning out. I noticed everything now. Who parked where? Who lingered too long by the shampoo aisle? Whose hands trembled when they handed over cash? A man came in on a Monday night around 8:50, wore a wool coat, walked slow. My breath hitched, just for a second. But it wasn't him. He was younger, nervous. Asked for help finding toothpaste. I walked him to the aisle, pointed it out, then stood there for a moment after he left. My reflection in the freezer door staring back at me, silent as always. Something in me had changed, whether I wanted it to or not. There's a kind of loneliness no one warns you about, the kind that creeps in when someone else decides to see you in a way you never asked for. And even after they're gone, their eyes still feel like they're on your back. But over time, the fear became something else. Not acceptance, not forgiveness. Just awareness. A new kind of silence. One I could live with. Eventually, the night shifts didn't scare me anymore. The shadows didn't stretch as long. But I still kept that box cutter in my pocket. Not because I expected him back, but because some ghosts don't leave. They just stop knocking. Kindness is a powerful force, but it's not always without consequences. Ava's story is a quiet reminder that being seen, even in the smallest ways, can leave lasting impressions on others, for better or worse. Some people carry that moment like a lifeline. Others reshape it into obsession. In a world that often rewards disconnection, Ava chose empathy. But empathy without boundaries can invite shadows in. And once they're inside, it's harder than you'd think to shut the door again. So be kind, but be careful, because attention, even unspoken, can become a mirror, one that reflects more than just your own image.